Good evening, everyone. It's the 19th of May, 2022, and we're gathered here for the fiscal year 23 Budget Commission review. And I know Commissioner Myers, as Mayor Pro Tem, is going to guide us through the conversation. Mentioning Commissioner Myers, prior to her structured discussion, we do have a handful of presentations. And I know they're going to begin with discussion of the Juvenile Court Chief Judge, Amanda Trimble, who I know is here with Court Administrator Lisa Zarate. Come on up with 15 minutes. Of course, in addition to the budget request, we have the intergovernmental agreement with Coney County for definition of an 80% second judge on our current agenda for adoption on June 7th. Ready to roll?
All right.
All right. Good to see y'all.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. I think I've met most everyone here, but for those I haven't met, my name is Amanda Trimble. I'm currently the presiding judge over Juvenile Court. Judge Mayu Hall is our part-time judge as well. And I wanted to talk with you a bit today about the reason for the request and several things you requested, frankly, but specifically the increase in salary. I'm going to go ahead and say up front that I do not prefer asking for money on my own behalf. It feels strange to me. I have been in the public service arena my entire legal career, actually before my legal career as well. And I'm very aware of the need to spend taxpayer dollars and government resources carefully. I worked as a public defender for 12 years and learned how to operate with virtually no budget, quite frankly. But here's where I'm coming from tonight. It becomes a matter of systemic equity. And that's really where I want to focus. Hopefully, your attention and thoughts and any questions you may have. Currently, if we look at similarly situated juvenile courts, and when I say similarly situated, I'm using data from the Administrative Office of the Court, or the Juvenile Judges Council, for counties that are dealing with similar dependency caseloads, child abuse and neglect cases, similar populations from census data from 2010. Juvenile court judge salaries are the lowest funded by a significant amount. I think $16,000 for the full-time position, and proportionally equivalent for the part-time position. And my concern is this: at a time when we're all addressing a systemic equity problem, I don't want the families and youth of Clarke County to have a juvenile system that is given less attention, right, from its local government, its taxpayers, than those of juveniles in other jurisdictions. And, that's as simple and as complicated as what my request is. As the presiding judge, I have an ethical duty under the requirements of the Judicial Qualification Commission to run an efficient and well-administered court. That's one of my ethical responsibilities. And ensuring that have equity in our court is part of that responsibility. So I'm happy to take any questions that people may have, but that's the position at this point. And if you wanted to add anything specifically.
Yes. Sure. Just for some historical context, Judge Trimble, before she became the full-time judge for the juvenile court, she was the part-time judge for 4 years. So now close to 6 years as a juvenile court judge. And when she started, it was 2.5 days, but everybody in our court system knows that Judge Trimble worked more like a full-time judge. And we have a part-time judge now. He works 3 days a week. He gets paid for 3 days a week. He doesn't work more than that. And we don't expect him to. Nobody should be expected to work more than what they get paid for. And she started at the minimum for the statutory requirements. I think it's for a part-time judge, it's about $20,000 for each day per week that's worked. And that's the same for the part-time judge. And the same for the presiding judge that handles all of the administrative duties. When she came on as the presiding judge, the salary didn't change. So there was no account for the 4 years of experience brought into that position. So, she got paid for more days, but the overall, the range per day was exactly the same. And we were discussing yesterday, I don't think that amount changes. So she could be here 10 more years and that amount does not change. It's not get a local county supplement. There's no COLA, there's no longevity increase associated with this position. So it's essentially that $100,000 for the full-time judge.
It's true. Juvenile court is always in an interesting position statutorily. We are connected in ways to the superior court. And that's much longer to explain. I'd be glad to do it when we have more time or if anybody's interested. I'm not considered a state employee. I'm a county employee. However, for salary purposes, for cost of living and all of those things, for whatever reasons I don't know, my salary in Judge Hall's, if he becomes a county employee, are not subject to those same increases, cost of living and all that. And that is beyond my pay grade to know why that is. That's just how it is and how it's been. So if you don't authorize it, we don't get it. And so our salaries would stay exactly the same unless you change it.
And that expenditure would be $16,000. Is that right?
That's what we requested. I never want to negotiate against myself, but at the same time, any move, I understand the very real constraints that all governments, particularly local governments, are under when apportioning these funds. Any move in the direction of bringing us closer to system equity that is, on par with other jurisdictions is a move in the right direction.
So 16,000 came from, Judge Norris was going to be here, but he has a sinus infection and wasn't able to join us. But as the Superior Court Chief Judge, he sets the compensation, with approval from the governing authority. But 116 was really just based on the case study that I submitted with our request. That was the next level, or I guess pay level from Judge Trimble. So it was 100,000, then it jumped from 160,000.
And that was
all the others are.
I'm sorry. That was in the Macon circuit. The range there with 2 full-time judges is 160,000 to 124,000. So our request, as you said, was then the next lowest of a similarly situated county. And, with the highest of a similarly situated county being $163,000. So there's quite a range. We are pretty far below the bottom of that range.
So all you're asking for is 16,000, is that right? Sounds good to me.
So yeah, I'm all for, you had me an increase in salary. So Judge Norris sets the pay and that's based on the governing body. And it sounds like the pay that you came into was low and it has not changed over the course of many years. So my thing, what I'm trying to get at is, I think, is this just do 16,000 at the lower level, consider that you haven't had a pay increase in amount of years?
I would suggest that you should not feel constrained by that number, but it's what seemed a minimum appropriate request.
Because the other jurisdictions are not even at that level, and based on the work that you do, it's just it's kind of almost insulting. But does Judge Norris set that? Do we have to go through him to correct that or increase it?
The way the statute reads is fairly general in saying that the compensation is to be set by the Chief Superior Court Judge, and then with the approval of the governing body. So I am not aware of any particular procedure that must be followed other than the procedures of the local government. So my belief would be that he would make the request that is as he has done, which would satisfy the setting portion of the statute, and then it would be up to the governing body to use its policies and procedures to approve that or not.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions, thick as this book is, we get just brief summaries for all the departments. So I see that Juvenile Court had a number of requests, this among them, and many others that aren't. If you happen to have on hand, or could you send to us the more detailed breakdown of the Juvenile Court's
Budget?
full request?
Yeah, I can. I did not bring a printed.
Commissioner, it's in that Excel spreadsheet that you received that had all departmental requests. There's a judicial tab.
Okay.
It was sent.
If you are not able to access that for whatever reason, please let me know and I will be glad to send it.
But I guess to understand this, so the entry level pay for this position was just set at 100,000 years ago and hasn't changed. You came in last year at that entry level, and the specific and sole request you're talking about today is related to bringing that pay from 100 to 116, 100,000 to 116,000.
That is correct. I'm happy to address any other of our budgetary issues. You may not know if you don't have the full budget, if anyone has any questions. And the history of the pay can get a little bit complicated because the juvenile court, the county receives from the state what is called a grant. It's a grant of funds from the state to help offset what the local government has to pay for juvenile court judges' salaries. So in 2017, I believe that grant amount changed from $80,000 a year to $100,000 a year. Judge Robin Shearer was the presiding judge at that time. And so because the law requires that grant to be used for judges' salaries don't have to be limited to that, but that grant can't be used for anything else. Her salary was then increased accordingly at that point. The long and short of it is that historically, my understanding is that the juvenile court judge's salary has been the grant amount and the grant amount only. On the surface, that may sound reasonable. The tricky part of that, however, is that it's not a grant amount per judge, it is per circuit. So the grant amount will never be sufficient to cover more than one judge's salary, if that makes sense. So having the salary strictly tied to that grant amount doesn't make a lot of sense. And I may have made that more confusing than less, but please look.
I had a question. Thank you, Commissioner Myers. I'm looking at some of your, I guess, performance measures or cases filed, is what I would say. CY 2017, I mean, it really seems like an outlier. I almost want to see 16 and 15 because I'm looking, delinquent cases filed in 2017, 1,100, 284 filed this past year, and 287 the year before. Deprivation cases 934 in 2017, 179 CY 21. So it just seems, a big drop in cases filed, from 2017 forward.
We need an asterisk on that. The uniform rules of juvenile court changed at that time, so the way cases are numbered drastically changed.
Okay.
Before that uniform rule change, every motion or document that was filed in juvenile court had to have a separate case number. Per the uniform rules, that wasn't a decision we made locally, and then those uniform rules changed, and so now there is one case number per child, and so
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
that discrepancy there.
Thank you. I've spoken on this to my colleagues before, how concerned I am about school attendance in this county. I know where my son attends school, some of his classmates have missed 50 days of school this year. So I was wondering what sort of role the juvenile court's been playing in ensuring that our kids are able to get to school. Obviously, this child is 8 years old. They're not responsible to get themselves to school. So what have you seen in your courtroom?
Sure. Very timely topic. I'll address a few different areas where the juvenile court is involved. First, I, by designation by Judge Norris, is designated by statute chief judge. We have an attendance protocol and school climate panel that is, or committee rather, that is required to meet yearly. to review a written protocol for our community that's on file with the state. We actually met today for setting a time to review the current attendance policies. The policy that our community is operating under now was written in 2009. There have been reviews. I cannot say historically how often that has taken place because it just predates me. But I know that since I've been here, I was part of a committee beginning to review that policy in 2019, just before COVID. So we are long overdue for a review. We have met multiple times. It requires an annual review. We've met multiple times, but have not fully been able to review that policy due to COVID closure, school closures, and all of that. So separately, that is a policy issue.
Yeah.
Separately, the juvenile court has jurisdiction over truancy matters that are filed as child in need of services cases. I've talked with the mayor some about this. We have dedicated a part-time position in our court as the CHINS coordinator. We have a multidisciplinary team of stakeholders that meets monthly to assess the needs of the family and barriers to attendance. And we have a number of individuals who are community stakeholders on that team to try and address those barriers through the CHINS process. We also have jurisdiction over educational neglect dependency cases if they are filed by the Department of Family and Children's Services. We hear the cases that are filed before us. We are not in charge of when those cases are filed. And so I don't think I would be the best person to speak to state policies on when the Department of Family and Children's Services files educational neglect cases.
Sure. What's been the trajectory on those cases filed?
And neglect cases, I do facts. Few. I couldn't give you a number, but they are not consistently filed. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And we don't, at this time, have very many truancy petitions filed under CHINS. We always give the families an opportunity to go through the outside committee process. One of the main barriers that has been reported to me from our coordinator from that committee is family engagement. We'll have, 30, 60 notices for CHINS committee review go to families in a month, and they'll get one or two actual visits. One thing that the court has recently done or is doing right now to attempt to address that, we're essentially beta testing having an intern. We have an undergrad intern in our office right now who is, we haven't fully named her position, but sort of a community engagement type person who is just outreaching to all of the families that are in our court, including those with attendance issues. What we know is that school attendance and truancy is a symptom of other issues that are happening in the home. There's no question about that.
But if the cases aren't being filed, then your scrutiny is not triggered. So it really depends on the cases being filed.
Ultimately, yes.
Yeah.
There are different ways. When you say, the reason I hesitated is because when you say cases being filed, then they can be filed at a complaint level, which would then trigger the CHINS committee process that is under my purview, but I'm not part of because I have to maintain neutrality if it ever comes to court. I can't have heard that outside of a court setting. But then if it's coming to the courtroom, then a petition would have to be filed to bring that.
Thanks for the update. I think that's a timely topic.
I want to have one other short question here because we do have 3 other presenters here. So I'm going to finish up this round and other people can submit questions as needed. But Commissioner Houle.
Recruitment and retention has been a theme for us all along. This whole budget cycle, this whole year. I see that you have 1 vacancy of the 5 positions. Would you care to share with us what that vacancy is?
Yes, and it has changed recently. So we began with a vacancy of our court clerk position. Unfortunately, our juvenile clerk of court passed away. So we had a temporary worker in place while we were going through the hiring process. Our deputy clerk then moved to the clerk of court position. She went through the hiring process and was promoted, which left a vacancy with our deputy clerk position. And 2 days ago, we filled that with another worker who had been in our position. So that has been a moving target. We currently have a vacancy as, I just called it file clerk. It's technically called a case management clerk.
Thank you, Judge Trumbull. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we want to welcome up the Chief Public Defender, John Donnelly, to give the presentation. Now, I want to remind my colleagues as we start asking questions to try to focus on questions relevant to the budget and other bigger discussions to have at another time so that we can make sure that we leave enough time for the following presenters as well. So I am going to, I know I was out when this started, so I'm going to get my timer going for the 15th. But thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm John Donnelly with Public Defender's Office. I've been there for a long time now, but I'm still enjoying the chaos of work that we do in the criminal courts, especially from our side of it. About an hour ago, I was thinking about coming over here and they called me and said, oh, former client of mine is here to see you. He wants to know if you have a few minutes to talk to him. Like, oh, it's really kind of a bad time when we come down and just see what he wants. And he just wanted to thank me. He had been in prison, and he's a guy, he's probably like in his early 50s and grew up around the Vine Street area and been in and out of prison since he was a young man, mostly for theft related things, probably some addiction underlying that. Every time he gets out of prison, he comes back and the neighborhood has drastically changed. And in the last 30 years, keep seeing more and more expensive housing going up. He, for some whatever reason, and his family were sort of left out of that wealth increase, the prosperity that took place over there. But anyway, he was in prison, and he contacted me while he was in prison to try to get his sentence altered to get him into the transitional program that we have now at the diversion center. And I was able to do that for him. Sounds real simple. It should be simple, but it's not. And, anyway, we like to try to help people even after, the case is done in court and when they're serving a sentence. He just came by to tell me how grateful he was for the work that we did. And he is in the diversion center now. He's making $20 an hour at Pilgrim's Pride. I didn't know they were unionized there. He said he was in the union and started going to church, he said, this Sunday. And he's got plans to, reach out to younger people. And so that was really nice. We try to help people the best we can. And we really don't, just as clients, but as the humans and the families behind that are struggling with them. And they come to us in places of pain and stress. And sometimes the case that is the thing that brings them to us is sort of not even the most fair stressor that they have going on in their lives. But anyway, we keep working away. One of our lawyers had a murder trial last week and it came back with a not guilty verdict. That's kind of a big deal. Some people, might want to pelt me with rotten tomatoes for having done that, but we stand by that. And we think that our effort, a representative body from the community agreed with us that the state had not the evidence that authorized them to convict the person. Not all cases result like that, but it's not an easy thing to do. We presented our budget request to the mayor. I think he recommended it be adopted as requested, so I'm not sure if any of y'all have any issue with that or any questions for me, but I'm happy to answer most of that. We are funded by about a third by the state, and then the rest by the 2 counties in the circuit, and the bulk of that is from y'all here in Clarke County. They'll pay our rent on the building and the salaries of 14 lawyers and youth staff. state picks up the salaries for the others. So it's in the past, when I have advertised an opening for an assistant public defender, I would get a lot of resumes, and from places that I really didn't think would bother. Sending me a resume from Idaho or Texas or something like that. They haven't practiced criminal law here in Georgia. That's more what I'm interested in. And I stopped, or I would try not to post them. And I would try to, because we have the law school here, we have, connections at the other law schools. We try to get word of mouth out that we have an opening coming up. And we're pretty successful getting the jobs filled that way. Right now we have an opening. I've had it posted for about 6 weeks, maybe more. And I haven't gotten any interest in it. There is a weird climate for, I don't think it's as bad with other public interest law jobs, but with public defense in particular, if you look at the Georgia Public Defender Council website for the job openings, almost every circuit in the state has openings. And I don't get it. I thought that, after sort of social justice movements that were on TV every night a couple of years ago, that would maybe light the fire under some people that I would have more interest in our work. I don't know. So it is very important for me to get the increases that we've requested for people who are working there now, to keep them. We still, the last time I did an open records request, there were assistant solicitors, assistant DAs, assistant county attorneys, superior court law clerks. The entry levels were pretty consistent with our staff and their, but after with 4, 5, 6 years experience, there are people who are getting more than us in salary. So I'm trying to get that. And it's really hard to compare sometimes, but it's and then with 10 years experience, it's even worse. So I'm trying to keep that within sort of striking distance of the comparable publicly funded law offices in town. Yes.
The mayor's budget has 86,000 for a salary and benefit adjustment, and I wonder if you could address whether or not there was a larger request or what.
I think it was exactly what I requested.
Okay.
That they approved, or that the mayor's office passed along.
So you this is.
Yeah, and and I will say
it's included in here.
Yes, I mean it's too late now, but I will say it feels like the climate has changed even since January when I wrote this up. That I think I would have done a little bit more of a reach if I was writing it up now, but whatever. But it is.
We agreed too quickly. We agreed to your.
No. It's just I think the economic climate.
No, I'm just.
That the inflation seems to be looming, and in Fulton County, this is crazy. Fulton County Public Defender's Office. I don't know how they got the Fulton County Commission to do this. They like doubled the salaries of the assistant public defenders because of the emergency. I guess they were looking at a lawsuit of some sort, and a starting public defender out of law school is going to make about $100,000 a year if they choose to go to Fulton County. They're going to make about 54 if they come to me, and so that's pulling a lot of people away from mostly the metro Atlanta areas. My office has been lured by that yet, but I was everyone around the state, in my circle was kind of shocked at that. But I guess they were so understaffed. That was yes.
I guess I'm wondering and just listening, and you said that the climate has changed since January. I guess if you had a opportunity for a redo, what would that number look like right now from January? I mean, just off the top of your head.
Yeah, I would probably ask for 1 or 2% more for some of the assistant public defenders.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one more question. The 86,000 that you requested, what kind of, you mentioned 54,000 as a starting salary. what would that change it to? And there would also be changes to the other people as well as just an overall?
Oh, yeah. So it's, I mean, I don't, I hate being in charge of sort of dividing up this pie that I get but I try to be very thoughtful about it. And people who have been there longer, I try to reward them, and people who are taking on sort of a heavier workload. We're divided up into different courts, and people who are in traffic court are not nearly as overwhelmed as people who are in taking serious felony cases. So I keep that in mind. And so there may be people with a lot of experience that are doing misdemeanor type cases that I'm not going to ask for as nearly the kind of increase that I would for someone who's being asked to represent, our.
Will the starting salary bump up to?
We don't really have anyone at that level, but it wouldn't be much.
Okay.
High,
Okay.
But someone who's making, say, 58 now, I'm going to try to get them to 64. A couple people in that spot. I have several people who've been there 6, 7, 8 years who are making 64, and I'm trying to get them to 70.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Valiant.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from Executive Director of the Athens Regional Library, Valerie Bell. Welcome.
Thank you. We have some handouts for you. I don't know who we give those to.
Here, I'll take them or here we have someone helping out here. So.
Yeah, okay. Can we just go ahead and let Ms. Bell know that we're gonna fund that request that they've been asked for?
I mean, I had a question. I
No, I want to hear what you have to say, but I don't want to sit here and worry.
Right. Yeah. I but I don't want to I think there's some bye, we're good.
No.
Questions I think we all have. Yeah. Thank you.
So, good evening. My name is Valerie Bell, and I'm the Executive Director for the Athens Regional Library System. With me tonight is Fane Russell. She's the Chair of the Clarke County Board of Trustees, and Sue Claxon, who's our Assistant Director for Organizational Development. I want to thank you for the time and consideration that you've given to the library on this matter. I should say that the library board and I are now, and always have been, very concerned about the salaries for the staff, and we want them to be paid a livable wage that meets library standards as well as the counties that we serve. That has been reflected in every budget that we have submitted since I became the director. In the packets before you, you will find the original request, a new proposed request, a document that could act as a salary schedule, and at the bottom, the last document is my salary from the last, since I started working for Athens Regional Library. In the original request, we asked for a total increase of $420,000. This included an increase of $3 per hour for our shelvers and paid interns. We arrived at that figure in part because that is the amount that other nonprofits and SPIA, the School of Public and Information Affairs, pays their interns. However, that amount seemed to have caused some question. So in the new proposal, we changed it to $15 an hour. There was also a question about the lead library assistants. That was a difficult decision. However, since the leads are a full-time and work directly under a regional coordinator, we kept them at the original $15 per hour. And that has since been changed to $16 an hour. You will note in the new proposal, there are two alternatives. This is because somehow our original budget proposal that was sent to the commission was shared with a part-time staff member with less than 1 year of MLIS service. She subsequently made changes to the document that we submitted and then shared that with other staff. Proposal number 1 reflects an increase to the original document of $67,995. Proposal number 2, created by this part-time staff member, reflects an increase to the original document of $94,816. Mamie Fike, the business manager, and the Board of Trustees and I take our budgeting responsibilities seriously. We ask for what we need. However, there's also additional full-time positions that are needed at the library and are not reflected in our current budget. Because of this and the request for a salary schedule, I do plan to work with our regional board to fund a complete and accurate salary study for the Athens Regional Library System. Finally, it should also be noted that Georgia is one of only 2 states in the United States that fund libraries, and our state funding ranks 7th among those in the country. The local funding for libraries in Georgia ranks 48. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, I just wanted clarity on which documents are which. This is the original request as titled.
Correct.
And then this, can you clarify which, is this the staff generated?
We recreated a document after we received some questions from the Board of Commission, and that would be proposal number 1. That proposal was sent somehow to a part-time staff member who made up a different proposal for the staff for it and shared that among the rest of the staff. And that would be proposal number 2.
So that's the longer one.
We don't have any both there.
They're both there?
Proposal hourly rate number 1 and proposal hourly rate number 2.
On the long sheet. On the long sheet.
On the long sheet. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying.
The second column over is proposed hourly rate. That's number 1. This, and number 2 is next to it.
Okay,
And then on the second page is the total for each.
got it. Okay, thank you.
And the one you all did is,
Proposal number,
okay,
however, proposal number 2 has been shared with my staff.
okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, so the way I'm reading this is that you're asking for an additional 320,000 above the original request. If we go with proposal number 2.
Proposal number 2 is, let me see,
Original request was
That's 515,
it's 515, yeah.
and what's budgeted, the budget now is 200.
right, so it's another $315,000.
No, well, the proposal, the original proposal we sent in was 420.
Right, yeah, the
So-
mayor's already got 200 of that. And
So it'd be the 3,
Yeah.
above the mayor's recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry,
So-
I'm like,
So proposal,
Edwards, I will focus on my.
okay, so proposal number 2. I guess I'm just curious why you're sharing that with us. Is it because the employees are now thinking that this was the official proposal because it was altered?
That's the expectation of the staff now,
Okay.
that we're not fighting hard enough for them to get their full fund.
That's interesting.
Commissioner Davenport?
So what's your thoughts? I'm, getting paid more. I'm for that. So what's your thoughts? What is staff and board of directors' thoughts on proposal number 2?
At this point, proposal number 2 is the one that I think we should probably go with.
Is it equitable? Is it fair? Is it? I noticed some of the positions, librarian with masters goes from 19 to 20. And so I just express yourself. How you feel?
I feel really disappointed that, that this went out to our staff.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would support proposal number one. I mean, I have a problem with, a part-time person making changes to this. And
Right, she shared this with the staff.
Yeah, I mean, and I would be fine,
Yeah.
it came to us, we're going with number one. That's the official request that came through. I just am not interested in gratifying something that was created as a pretense of some sort of official communication from your staff. I see that as undermining your leadership.
I do too.
So I would suggest to my colleagues that we go with proposed rate number one. I'm glad to have this information from you, Madam Director, creating, a very detailed account of how this appropriation will go. Hearing, like you said, that Georgia localities are 48th in the nation in funding the libraries. Forgive me for wondering aloud, do we support the library in this community? Because it troubles me when I get emails that folks are becoming homeless working for the library. So I love the library. I support the library. I've spent many times there with my son Teddy for children's reading with Mr. Evan. And this budget is, in my mind, it's a moral document. What are we going to value in this community? So I value the library, and hundreds of people have reached out to us pointing out that they value it too. So let's put our stamp and show the support through this document. So
I do have concerns, because there is now a morale issue if we don't go with proposal number two. Because yes, I agree that has undermined my leadership.
Well, you can blame Commissioner Edwards if you want to, because I'm deeply troubled that your budget initiative here was undermined in sort of an underhanded way.
Yeah.
And proposed hourly rate one gives everybody up to a livable wage. Even the paid interns and the shelvers are now up to $15 an hour. So,
Commissioner Thornton, thank you, Commissioner Edwards.
First of all, let you know that I am a fan of the library.
Thank you.
So whatever, we can do. But I did think I heard in your presentation, you would in the future look at compression study to be much more objective in the future, that you don't have different folk going in different directions. I think that now that we're into what is equitable, I think objective compression study is good. So I do commend you for taking that leap out there. I will say, I'm not as adamant as Commissioner Edwards. I understand about morale. You can have the best folk working for you, but if morale is down, people will start going over. You're not a dictatorship that people cannot at least share another idea. I would hope not. I appreciate you, even though it was kind of, at least brought it to us. And that's leadership to me. So I think that as a commission have things that we can look at, but I do not fault anybody that has a difference of opinion and wants to share it. And I commend you not being, feeling manipulated on the line that you at least presented it to us, because it didn't have to come out this way. And whoever did the second one, they should commend you also, because you didn't have to do it. So I thank you. I support the library, and whatever this commission works out, I'm sure it's going to be very beneficial. But that compression study, as you move forward, is going to help you and your staff, because this money issue is going to come up again.
Yes, and it's not just Athens-Clarke County. This is something that we've seen throughout all of the region. And so I've investigated a little bit, and I think we can get a salary study for around $20,000 to $30,000.
Thank you.
So we'll be working on that. I'll present it to the board next month.
But I would just following up on the commissioner, I'm looking at these salaries that you have come up with on your own. I think that it's clear to me you have addressed compression as best you can for the circumstances. I see that people with master's degrees are making more than folks shelving. So I see you've made some effort there. So I appreciate that.
I'd like to ask one question here. I too love the library and the work that you've done here. Is there money in the budget request for this compression, the 20,000 for the compression study?
I will be asking the region if there's any money left over. I'll be asking the regional board if there's any money that we can put towards a salary study. I'm not saying that it's going to happen this year. It may have to happen next year, depending on if there's any in reserve. But whatever they have in reserve, we'll try and make it happen.
It is because I think we all are really committed to this. Perhaps there's some will among my fellow commissioners to put something in the budget for that.
It would be a regional thing.
Okay.
So one of the things I know that has been a question is how the state salaries, the state and, the county go. The state salaries were raised this year, in this fiscal year, $5,000. We get 7 full-time equivalent positions from the state. We have 11 people on at least partial state salary. And so the reason why they're on partial state salary is because I've been trying to make it fair to Athens-Clarke, that because Athens-Clarke is about the size of our other regions combined, that we're doing a 50-50. So as close as we can get, and I've been moving towards that to make it fair for Athens-Clarke County taxpayers, that some of those people who do regional work, most of those people who do regional work are now on the, at least partially 50% on state salary. So that's how come we have 11, and that's how come we did not get $5,000.
Thank you for that. And perhaps there is some contribution that might be able to move this along. Commissioner Houle?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Thornton, and then we're going to wrap it up here.
I had a question.
Oh, and then Commissioner Parker. Again, hard to see here.
A couple questions and a few thoughts. The first question was just I wanted to understand basically the only difference between proposal 1 and 2, if you will, are the 4 positions that total 12 people. Is that right? So there's the circulation supervisor from 17 to 18, the librarian, the heritage room librarian, and the HR specialist. Those are the only ones that are, am I correctly understanding those are the only ones that are?
Yep, the circulation supervisor, the way it went up to 18, even though the circulation supervisor and matriculating, yep, that would be correct.
But otherwise, everything about wage floor and the general goal here remains the same in both proposals.
Well, the proposed hourly rate changed pretty drastically.
Yeah.
When you add it all together.
Sure, yeah, no, I
So that, and the 10%, I can say also that the people who were state paid, even if they're partially state paid, well, no, the ones that are partially state paid, they would get 10% on the Athens-Clarke County funding, not their entire salary. So that was taken into account. And anybody that's 100% state paid would not get anything on it. And actually some of the higher paid staff would not receive an additional raise.
And then my other question is, if you could just please share, because at my reading, and I'm not working in the library, so I just don't understand the rationale here. So I'd like to, and I asked you this by email too. So we have the library assistant and the lead library assistant who are currently making different wages. The lead library assistant's at $11.22 and the library assistants are at $10. But this puts both of those positions at the same amount. I see that's the same
That's the
proposal.
same in both of them.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the rationale is. When I think of wage compression, that's one of the examples I hear brought up a lot is you have somebody who moves from a position to one where they have extra responsibilities or are supervising someone, they would expect an additional amount for that, so.
For ours, it went up to, I think we went up to $1,650. So that's not reflected in here. And so I can't, for the lead, yes, I see that the lead is still listed.
So that 16 should say 1650 for the
Yes, probably for both.
either column. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Well, I guess just a few thoughts. I mean, first, y'all do amazing work at the library. I utilize your facilities for a variety of services. Y'all helped me with my passport recently. I had an amazing trip to Montgomery. When we talk about the social work that we want to see this community do better, you all are already doing it, and you have people who've been doing it and not getting paid enough to do it all along. I really appreciate that you brought forth a bold request to try to bring the wages up. And I also want to express to you and your staff and to everyone here, I think it's good, it's been a necessary part of this discussion, that the staff has participated in advocating for the library, that they've told their story, that they've helped us understand. And I think it makes sense, I'd remind everybody here, all of our documents are public documents. The way that these budgets work, all these line items are supposed to be transparently available to everyone in the public, including everyone who works for the library. So it makes sense to me that they would see what was going on and want to participate. Now, I totally appreciate that we should let library leadership do library leadership's job on deciding what the final allocations are. But to me, it makes sense that we would have people participating and advocating for what they'd like to see too. And the other thing I'd like to remind everybody of here is that we were surprised by the fact that our push to 15 for county employees left such a gap for the library. I think we're all sharing responsibility here for the low wages library workers have not only worked for many years prior, but especially in this past year when the rest of the county employees went up. So I'm glad to hear that we seem to be really unifying around wanting to honor this request. And I'll say that I'm encouraged to, without attaching it to the details of the line items in either column presented here, honoring the higher amount, the proposed hourly rate 2 amount, which would be enough to cover salary study if you wanted to go that route, or to make other adjustments that you see fit when you're under less time constraints. But in my mind, that's a worthwhile total amount for us to advance forward, and then you all can decide what to do with that. And my final thought is I'm just very encouraged to see that, and remind everybody here too that this proposal we have today is different than the original proposal. Yeah. And I appreciate you all making adjustments based on discussions we've had. So I'm very encouraged that, for example, you brought those $12 an hour positions up to 15, which led to you bringing everyone else up even more. So I think that's a good thing.
Commissioner Thornton?
I think that Jesse said exactly what I feel. I am very supportive of that. I know you said the compression study was going to be regional and you were going to request that regionally. But maybe with the funding, we could allocate a portion for Clarke County. So if it's $30,000, maybe $5,000 can come out from Clarke County and break that down from your region. I have never been so embarrassed at these past meetings listening to your advocates speak. It was very embarrassing to me as a commissioner that we gave ourselves increases, and y'all are working so hard much longer than we have appreciated. So I'm for I know we got to discuss this. I'm only one vote, but I'm going to tell you where I'm coming from. I do support the higher amount. I'm sorry it brought up some contention or an impression of whatever, but that's where I'm coming from. It's long overdue. You should not have had to beg us to do what was right.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to double check that these rates of increase, which I would support if we did that higher rate to help give you all some flexibility with that wage study and other things that may arise. But these would be effective July 1st at the beginning of our fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I also want to commend everyone that's been advocating for this, including part-time folks. I've heard folks behind the rail here and others like saying things I would disagree with about a part-time staff member that was advocating for ensuring that everyone was brought not up just up to 12, but to 15. And just keep in mind that we are technically part-time people sitting behind this table. It doesn't matter to me how much work you are still a member of this community, and your input is valued. So just for my colleagues back here, I just want to make sure we're not talking about folks in a denigrating manner based on that. But I wanted to ask about the wage study and to see if you all were intending to tie it to market rates, as we often do when we speak about making sure we're competitive and regional expectations for certain positions. We've also been talking about actually tying our studies to a wage floor to ensure that we're starting people off at a living wage, even if that's above the market. And living wage as defined by the MIT calculators, actually up to $16.09 for the Athens-Clarke County area. But we're doing a good job to get off to a good start here, I think. So I wanted to put that out there and see if you all would be interested in your study looking at a living wage floor rather than a market rate, or in addition to a market rate consideration.
I've been speaking with the state librarian, Julie Walker, and some of the other library directors that have had this. The last one was the Live Oaks Public Library that did it, and they used Evergreen, and that's where I got the possible amount that it would cost, because they are a library regional sort of system, very similar to ours. So they would, what I was told was that Evergreen looks at what's going on in Georgia, but they also look at what's going on in like South Carolina, a close size library in South Carolina. And they do work on all of that. I don't feel really qualified to do some of the things that, the state South, the structure, that's really not in my wheelhouse, frankly. So I think that the most effective means would be to hire a consultant to do a real salary study for us, and that could change a lot of things.
Okay, so I think it sounds like the consultant you were talking about Evergreen.
Yes, that was one of them.
One of them, yeah. So they are kind of looking at what is common across the region, and not necessarily. But so you all might be interested in also tying it to what is calculated for a living wage for our area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. That'd be awesome, because I'd love to see us do that more often.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Parker. I want to, we spent about 5-10 more minutes on this, so I just want to be fair to our next presenter and to all our discussions. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All the library supporters who've been here in front of us. And now I'd like to welcome up, I believe it's the police department. And yes, Interim Chief of Police, Jerry Salters, and I believe you have some other guests with you, so. Thank you.
Just like what?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask Interim Chief Salters to get going and with this presentation here. Thank you all for being here again, and our young guest as well. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. First, I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration in our Athens-Clarke Police Department program. I have with me tonight is Officer Terrell Norman. He is a 2-year officer that works patrol. He has a huge passion and actually came to us a couple years ago from a cadet program. He's a success of that and cares very much about the community. And he has Manny Moore, 15 years old, and comes out of the Rock Springs community, and is a mentee of Officer Norman. So what I want to do is, instead of you hear and we've presented information, we put out some handouts, kind of our goals, our objectives, what we want to accomplish with this program. But instead, I'd like you to hear from the officer directly on his experience and what he feels and why he thinks the program's important.
How you doing, Commissioners? Again, my name is Officer Norman, Officer Terrell Norman. I want to speak first about my experience as a cadet. I worked for the Athens County Sheriff's Office as a cadet while I was in my undergraduate years. To make it short, that program pretty much changed my life. My mother couldn't provide a lot for me. She was a single parent home. My father was in the picture, but that program provided funding for me to be able to pay for a nice place to live. It provided me to be able to wear suits to be in leadership roles on campus. And also it allowed me to give back to the community in the sense of when I was the president of Collegiate 100, which is a mentor organization of 100 Black men, where we pretty much go out to high schools and middle schools and mentor young individuals that are in low-income areas. And we pretty much show them a different way of living, something that there is another way of living. And I was able to provide funds to them as well when I had the opportunity to. This is Manny Morris. Like I said, he's my mentee. We've been working together since October 2021. We met during a call at his home. He was doing something a little mischievous, as all kids do. We cannot do it. And I pretty much spoke to him, and his mother asked, because of the impact that I had on him in a short period of time, asked me to be his mentee. And I asked him if he was okay with that, and he said yes. And he told me he would be more comfortable with me asking him a question. So given the time that we only have 20 minutes, I'll just ask him one question. Manny, what has our relationship meant to you and your family?
So before I met you, we on one relationship that went on. But after I met you and stuff, we talked about things. Grades were in school. And everything changed. We on one relationship.
As you can see, even though I'm a police officer, I understand the difference in beliefs of individuals with law enforcement. But it's my belief that it doesn't matter what your role or your position is within the community, you can have an impact on the youth. And it's my goal to make sure that I'm doing that as well. Manny said that he wants to be a part of this program. I've told him about it ever since I started working on it about 6 months ago. And he said that he wants to be a leader within it. And it's my goal to hopefully get the funding so that he will be able to be a part of the program. In short, to speak on the goal, the goals are that we want to reflect our community. I'm sure as you look around throughout the day and throughout the night that our agency doesn't reflect our community currently. And that's simply because a lot of individuals that look like me don't want to be police officers. It's the stigma that comes along with law enforcement and some of the truths that come along with law enforcement. And because of that, we believe that if we work with young individuals, explore to cadet all the way up to full-time law enforcement officers, we can have an impact on that number and rise it up from it being 90% white males to it being at least 50-50, that including males and females. I also believe that the training and the experience that these young individuals will receive during that time will also provide them with opportunities to gain leadership experience and also opportunities to show that they are responsible. I also provided research that shows that many of the programs that are successful youth programs come because the young individuals feel responsible and that they are dedicated to a certain cause. That means that we're giving them roles and opportunities to actually be in leadership positions and leadership roles. Our program will allow them to have certain positions such as captain and lieutenant, where they'll be able to lead individuals under them. That leadership will be able to transition as they continue to matriculate throughout the program. The benefits of the program, like I said, the research shows that positive youth programs, developmental programs have positive long-term outcomes on grades, health, and career. And that's, again, usually because of them feeling more empowered, feeling more confident in themselves. Also, it, like I said, develops responsibility and dependability. When they feel like they can't be depended on, again, it encourages them to do the right thing. And when they see other individuals doing the wrong thing, they're more prone to step in and say something about it and hopefully encourage them to do the right thing as well. Another benefit is it reduces taxpayer costs on crime. As you all know, someone breaks into your home, your insurance rates go up. Someone steals your car and wrecks it, your insurance rates go up. And as studies have shown within Clarke County, a lot of the juvenile crime rates are portion of the crimes includes actually breaking into cars, burglaries, and also auto thefts. These individuals, actually, my first police chase included chasing young individuals, and believe it or not, I went home and cried that night because the individuals that we caught looked just like me, and it was very sad in knowing that their life is on a trajectory that may lead to prison, and I just want the best for them in a sense. Additionally, the investment and cost of youth programs is outweighed by the benefits that you receive, and that is monetarily and based on crime. The monetary aspect. One example was a researcher found that if you spend, I believe it was between $67 and $171 million statewide on youth programs, it can reduce taxpayer costs by $2 billion. And I thought that was a significant number. And I can only imagine what a small amount of money coming from the commission could do for Athens-Clarke County. Another portion of the reduction in cost is also the reduction in having to build prisons. That can reduce reduce the taxpayer cost by somewhere around $5 billion because you don't have to build prison because young individuals, even though it's a long game, 10 years from now, they aren't replacing the criminals that we already have locked up. They're actually contributing to society, contributing to their actual community where they live. My goal is to change the narrative, change these young individuals from being called at risk to being at promise. These young individuals, it's not their fault that they're choosing a life of crime. I believe Shaw and McKay spoke on it very well when they said that crime stems from social disorganization, and the lives of these young individuals is tarnished in a sense. One short story when I responded to a call in Rock Springs with the mother having an issue with her son. That young individual seemed very dark. He was 14 years old, but you could tell he was wise beyond his age. He had all dark clothing on. His response to everything me and another officer said to him was more so, all I see is death around me. Have you ever seen someone shot in the head at 10 years old? Things like this are leading these young individuals to a life of crime. They don't see another way. They don't see any other opportunity for themselves to be successful. And it's my goal to change that. It's my goal to make sure that if we have this program while I am a police officer, that I'm having an impact on the youth, because I believe education and not punishment is the solution. Again, studies have shown that narrowly gauged programs, such as programs focusing on drugs, sex, and alcohol, have limited success. Our program will have an impact on more than just those particular topics, but we'll show them different ways of living. We'll encourage them to go to college. We'll encourage them to be productive citizens and be civic minded. And I believe with our program being well-rounded, that it can have a greater impact than these, again, narrow-gauged programs. If you look at the executive summary, just quick stats, there is a chart there that shows that 82%, over 80% of particular crimes, I included the crimes in the other chart, over 80% of the juvenile crime committed in Athens-Clarke County was committed by young Black boys. And to me, it poses a question of how did they get there? How did we get to this point, and what can we do to change it? I understand that you may not agree that law enforcement should have a portion or impact on that, but I think it can be a start. I think our role with being so accessible and also with us assessing them on a regular basis and being around and being in the public, we have a different role that we can play in there. A lot of programs tend to happen during the day or only during the summertime, but crime has shown to usually occur for juveniles between the times of 2 and 8 p.m. That's usually when parents are at work and these kids are left home alone and they're not being guided, and they're out in different roles and joining gangs and getting access to guns, and they're not being supervised essentially. Again, like I said, I don't believe youth crime is the problem. What I believe is these are children who lack stable and organized communities and social lives, and other systems have failed them. And that includes our system, law enforcement system, the juvenile system, court system, the churches, schools, and parents. And we've all failed these young men. We have to blame ourselves. And it's my goal to not be a part of that number that's failing them, but be a part of the number that is ensuring that they have a successful life. Lastly, the issues that programs usually find is appropriate space where they feel safe and they're not being ping-ponged around going from one building to the next. But I believe that we already have a stable place where we can allow them to be. Additionally, trained staff. I have 10,000 hours of mentorship, and I wouldn't mind training the individuals that are going to work with the program. And if the chief would allow me to be over the program, I would ensure that our staff are trained and prepared to deal with the issues and problems that this community is facing with the youth. Additionally, transportation. Again, I'm sure that we can find a bus or something, or work with the school system, get a bus driver to stay after to take these kids home and make sure they arrive safely to our agency. But what we're asking for is secure, ongoing funding. That's one of the additional major problem that a lot of the programs that aren't successful tend to have. And because of that, we're asking that you guys help us out and allow us to start our agency. Last thing, further research has argued low quality programs disadvantage African Americans, and any decision made about these programs will affect their lives. So I guess I'm having a call out to you guys and just asking that you really consider this more than just numbers, more than just money, and more than just particular again, numbers on a chart. But these are people, these are young individuals, and they are our future. And if all of us don't come together and have an impact on their lives, I mean, nothing is going to change. If anything, things are going to get worse. One last stat I recently received from our crime stat analyst was that crime usually starts at the age of 10 years old. And that's around between the time of 2019 and 2022, it was maybe 5 individuals. But by the time we reached the age of, I believe it was 17 years old, we were in the hundreds, 500s and 600s of individuals that were, these are closed, cleared arrests where individuals, we know exactly who the suspect is. And that's a staggering number to me. And I believe this program can have an impact on that. And I hope that you guys will fund it.
Thank you very much. And it's Officer Norman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. This, for the public as well, this is a program that is in our mayor's budget. And I want a moment here to ask any question, not a long-term question about dealing with youth violence and such, or youth in all areas, but concerning the budget and whether or not this would be appropriate. Commissioner Edwards?
I'm thankful y'all came here today. I know maybe there was a little bit of a handicap having this come back to us after it was canceled out last year, but I support this program. I think we've had some problems recruiting folks for the police. We have a pretty strong vacancy rate. And I hear you, Officer Norman, we have a problem with youth mentorship as well. And to me, this program could help in both of those areas. I'd like to see, we've talked about community policing in this community. And so to me, this program fulfills that goal of community policing. We're reaching into the neighborhoods, engaging with young men like Manny, and we need some young women. I know I saw here there's only one African-American woman on the police force. So, we have some work to be done with recruitment. So I see this program as a pretty modest ask, $165,000, to try to attack this problem of diversity in our police force. It does trouble me that it doesn't reflect the demographic reality of where you're policing. So Officer Norman, I thank you for your presentation, and I hope my colleagues will support me in keeping this in the mayor's budget.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Wright, but I want to keep in mind that we can discuss this when we get to our budget discussion. And here, let's have our questions to our presenters here. Commissioner Wright.
Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate this wealth of information in here. So this has not happened. It's the same sort of request that we had during the pandemic, right? That was less likely to roll out. The Explorer, can you help me learn a little difference between the Explorer program, which seems like it's a subset of the Cadet program?
Yes, ma'am. So he has on the Explorer shirt.
Okay.
I paid for myself to have him be able to wear a uniform today. Pretty much the Explorer program is unpaid. It allows individuals who may be interested in law enforcement or just parents who may want their young individuals to have access to structure. It allows them to come in and they simply work with us either once or twice a week. And they also are able to come during the summer times. And we pretty much teach them things like of law enforcement aspects and the things that we know. But my goal is to not focus 100% on law enforcement, but also focus on their development and teaching them different ways of living, also showing them other aspects of life, such as going to college and going on college tours and things of that sort. There also are competitions for Explorers that are nationwide. There is a national competition in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. That competition has been canceled because of COVID, but whenever it starts back, I would like for our agency to have an Explorer program to be able to go up there and represent our county as a whole. The Cadet program, on the other hand, is for individuals between 15 all the way up to college. And the goal is to allow them to get paid $15 while they're in high school and possibly even get a $2 raise once they're in college. And they pretty much work for us. And it allows us time to be able to, in a sense, date them and to see if they will be a good officer for us. And even if they're not, that we mold them and help them become a good officer for us. And if they choose not to remain as an officer, they did give back to the community, whether that be mentoring the Explorers. That's one of the main goals, because as we all know, even when I was a child, it was difficult for me to listen to someone who was much older than me versus listen to someone who I consider cool, someone who was in college, and I felt like I can attain their amount of success. So that is the goal, to essentially start from Explorer to Cadet all the way up to a full-time police officer.
Gotcha. And then does the current Explorer program, is Vandy the current Explorer?
No, man. This is I paid for this, and I just wanted him to have a uniform. But no, there isn't a program right now. But I'm sure we're going to start one soon.
Okay. And then the officers who are assigned to the schools are also part of the networking in referring.
That is the goal. That is the goal. As studies show that most programs don't have individuals that need it most aren't able to access the programs. So I do want to work with the schools and the juvenile justice system to be able to make sure that the individuals that need it most are a part of the program.
Gotcha. And I appreciate your stat in here about how typical after-school programs, the enrollees already have support systems in, and that this is a different avenue, capturing a different target of juvenile. Thank you.
Commissioner Thornton, and then Commissioner Parker, then Commissioner Link. And then Commissioner Houle, then let's wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Manny. I know it's not easy sitting up here everybody looking at you like this, but thank you very much. And so I guess I was a little abrupt this afternoon when I saw you, because I made it real clear, like, we got too many youth programs. We don't need to be funding how y'all gonna all work together? And we just did this ARPA money for the summer. I would have loved to see this program and that part of money. But my question is under the recruitment, and maybe it's not it is a question. we do have a lot of youth programs and they work. Can you try to capture a way that you could tap into some of the other programs? So if whoever's doing something else, that they have this kind of offer or opportunity to be a cadet also. I'm just really concerned that we do have a lot of youth programs, but how do we intersect? How do we, you even said he may not want to be a police officer, but how have you thought about how you could tap in not just to the resource officers that are in schools or in the schools, but all the other youth programs that are out here?
Yes, ma'am. So I appreciate your question. You reminded me of another study that I read. Essentially, I believe it was in New York or New Jersey. They started a youth alliance where they brought all of the youth programs within that city together, and they worked together and they used statistics and they also used the data from their particular city. They put it all together and they went to those particular students and asked them, what do they want to do? So if the chief would allow me, if I would be over the program, that would be one of my first goals, to bring everyone together, whether it be just have one liaison from each of these programs. And if we find a young individual, because we do have access to the crime stats, we find one individual and we ask them, do they want to be a cadet? They say no. We will push them on to another program that is available and ask them, what do you want to do? And try our best to get them into that program. I believe given that we are within law enforcement and we have immediate access to the stats versus having to go through open records and things of that sort, I believe that we are in a special place where we can work with other organizations again and start an alliance and work together to make sure everyone is being served.
And just to add a little bit to that, we currently work with the Boys and Girls Club, the Youth Clarke County mentorship. We have officers that go to schools and do different things. So we're involved in a lot of different programs, but where this one's different is we want to bring them in, we want to pay them, we want to mentor them, because we're trying to help. One, it's community oriented, and just like with his mentees, he also has an opportunity to mentee the families and in parenting and other stuff and build that relationship, which is the center of community oriented policing and understanding. And then if we can get them into the police department as employees, or maybe, if they decide they want to be an attorney or something after school, but they've influenced so many other people that will help us to get where our department more reflects our community. We're a long way. So this is kind of the first and what I would like to see. And I think Officer Norman's the same way. Eventually, we'd like to see the entire county have something like this at some point. But we want to start it because we're constantly seeing these young men out here being arrested, shooting each other for stolen vehicles and all of this, and doing nothing is just not an option. So we want to do something to help the youth. And I feel like this program and paying them and getting them in and helping them to be leaders and teaching the younger people in the Explorer program is a right step and one direction that we want to go. Remember cost.
How long is an Explorer before they get to be a cadet?
11 to 15, and we might look at that 10 age, but again, by looking at statistics on when kids start committing crimes, we want to get in early, and a lot of them are be adjudicated, so that's where he talks about working with the juvenile court system, that we can take someone and start helping them and try to lead them and find out what factors are leading them towards crimes and gangs in the streets. And again, it may not be our program, but through the alliance thing, we could say, look, Boys and Girls Club would be good, but they're limited in what they can do. And what we want to do is focus on, just basically structure and leadership.
And I think the next question was Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, my first question was answered just now about the starting age of participants in the program. So yeah, I think I'm good actually.
Yeah, Commissioner Link.
Yeah, Commissioner Thornton kind of touched on some of my questions about existing youth programs and any outreach that's already been done with them. You guys kind of covered that. I'm still just have no idea what these kids will actually do. I mean, I understand they're going to be paid and, the purpose says get them to serve as role models and a bridge to the community, but I'm like, what are the actual tasks they're going to be getting paid for?
We've got the program set up where there'll be a portion of training to get them started, kind of an acclimation, different things like that, some mentorship, but then they're going to be assigned a problem in the community. It may be someone where they live, and we want their perspectives. We want to know what Manny thinks that should be fixed, or how he can help us as a police department to build relationships in certain areas or do certain things,
So you
how
have
he
any
perceives it.
examples, like,
So if he sees certain things in his community, or he thinks that something could be changed, then that'll be his community project, and we'll help him with the resources and setting up things and working through problems. How can we address? We've got violent crime happening here. What can we do? Well, let's do meetings and let's do this, or, you know, so really it's a youth-led program where we're going to listen to them. We're going to listen to them, allow them to have a voice in how we should be doing things and what we're doing, and also how to address certain issues in the community, whether it's a homeless issue or something. What say you, Manny? I mean, so we want to do that and encourage, and they'll be working. We're going to hold them accountable, and there'll be direct leadership with 2 NSO positions, make sure they're doing right, helping them through it, and of course, someone to kind of oversee the program.
Great. Let me get the last question in with Commissioner Hood.
Yeah, it's a couple, but hopefully they'll be quick. How many explorers do you imagine being able to, it says 10 cadets, but I'm just curious, like ballpark, roughly how many explorers are you thinking are engaged in this program at the same time?
Well, the rough estimate I put, again, the explorer portion, that's all me. The chief was only focused on the cadet program. I was focused on the whole grand scheme of the big idea of how we serve everyone. But essentially, we don't want to overwork the cadets to where they have to deal with 5 individuals, but more so maybe 15 and 10 cadets. So 15 explorers, 10 cadets. And then as the program expands, like the chief spoke on, we want to have these programs throughout the entire county where you all may have a cadet who's in here working and doing certain things to help you out in the court system, or the sheriff department, the fire department, as it continues. But it will grow eventually. But right now, I want to focus on training the individuals how to be mentors and allow them access to individuals that are younger than them, so that they can teach them how to grow up and be productive citizens.
And the idea is that they're not just cadets for 50 weeks, it's 50 weeks a year, and they stay on.
A continuous position.
And then the 2 people that you are contemplating as neighborhood service officers, are you imagining that those are new people you're going to hire, or people that are already working for ACCPD that you could like internally transfer to these positions?
That would cover hiring 2 new, we currently have 2 neighborhood service officers, and that would hire 2 additional to run the program to get things done. And
okay,
we're on a strict timeline that if we're approved on this, we're going to get moving so we can start making an impact in the community, because, you know, just what we're seeing day in and day out with our youth, we've got to do something.
Okay, so hiring 2 more new people in addition to you. Okay.
But we wouldn't slow down. I mean, we would have Officer Norman immediately get started, and let's go.
And then I guess if, you know, we do have this chronically high vacancy rate that y'all have been dealing with for years. So is there, would it make sense that we could just convert 2 of the existing vacant positions into these to kind of keep the overall budgetary figure roughly $90,000 lower on this?
We could look at that, but we would also need to make sure, because we have grant positions, so we would need to see if that's possible to do.
Well, remember, this is a new year where we're not budgeting all positions. So we're budgeting fill, you know, so that there's no savings there.
We're not, I mean, I understand that we're not budgeting them in the overall amount of money that's being allocated on the front end, and then we've got some on the reserve, but we are this proposes adding 2 new positions to the line item of number of positions. And I'm wondering why that's necessary if we've already got.
So what you're saying is that you would not increase the authorized positions, but you would provide the funding for them.
I guess that's what. And I guess just as a point of information, maybe for everybody before we get away from this, unless you all see otherwise, given the conversation we've had around the wage set study, we'd be looking at $15.60 an hour instead of 15, I think, right? And then we'd be looking at $32,448 instead of $31,929 to start. So that would probably up the cost of this a bit more based on those figures.
And again, I think that pay is important just because it makes it incentivized and it gives them an opportunity. So instead of having a life of making money selling drugs on the corner, then they have an opportunity to give back to their family. And that's why it's important.
I think Commissioner Davenport wanted to say something real quick.
Yeah, so I researched this program in other cities. I really think it's great. The major difference that I have seen from this program is that it is individualized to the individual, is paid, but also they also incorporate the parents and you get the parents involved instead of just the students. So I think we need to take that in consideration. But I like the program. Hopefully get funded. I tried last year. Hopefully be successful this year.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Manny and Officer. Be great. We have just a few minutes before our break, and the mayor wanted to speak to us about his budget, or as much as you wanted. You told me 5 minutes earlier today, and then the manager wanted to make a comment as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I appreciate it. Just wanted to highlight a few of the things that were part of the recommended budget and kind of offer some rationale and some basis for those. And I guess just since the police department just departed, want to, for all of us, kind of reflect back on the 20 years I've been working with teenagers. And I'll say that one of the great things about people when you develop a relationship with them and they're young is that there's an honesty and an authenticity that they offer. So one of the benefits of this program that I perceive is that our officers, our police department are going to be hearing the authentic lived experience of young people in the community, and that's really important. So you've got young people pushing up into the department, and then obviously with the prospective addition of 2 new officers, 2 more officers really actively engaged in the community. So you've got this sort of bi-directional dialogue. One of the things that I did for about 6 years of my time working with high school kids is arrange internships for them. And it's really common to see a young person who I placed in Botanical Gardens on campus become a Botanical Gardens employee and then kind of move up through the rank structure there. And that would be what I would hope for these explorers and these cadets. Again, so that if we want our department to reflect the community, we draw from it. So I've said about that. There were some things about Beach Haven. I've gotten a lot of engagement with the community around Beach Haven, which of course is a SPLOST project. And Beach Haven is a large property that we own. And of course, there's frankly illicit use of that right now. Some of it just very well-intentioned use of trails. And so this will allow that use to accelerate toward really sanctioned use, kind of on a low scale as that project gets going. I would offer that if you want to kick that to mid-year, that saves you nearly $80,000. And so that may be one approach. You want to take both planning and housing and community development, have some new positions. We again and again and again, when we talk to Brad Griffin about our special projects plan, add to that list. And it's a really important list because we want some of the systemic improvements, like more structured affordable housing.
What you just said about.
Yes, so both planning and housing and community development have some new positions recommended. And both of those would see some slight reorganization of the org chart within the department. On the planning end, we're always asking that department to do more special projects, but we're not providing them any more staff to do those projects. And we know it's just very busy right now. So whether it's the systemic things like inclusionary zoning or the neighborhood specific things like some of the requests we've gotten for, say, an East Athens overlay district, this would allow us to expedite some of those. In HCD, of course, we've been very interested in the service and street engagement part of this government, I think more so than many governments, and it's the right direction. But again, if we want that work done well and we want those priorities, whether it's about youth or homelessness supported, we need to staff them. There certainly is a significant capital expenditure that's anticipated in this budget. Part of that stems from my experience being a county commissioner in the downturn. And what we saw is when the downturn happened, a lot of things really were attenuated, cut out of the budget. And so many of these projects have really been years in the waiting. And with the prospect of an additional recession in 24, as some economists are predicting, What I don't want to see is over maybe a 20-year arc, this double hit to the community where we underfunded some things in the 2010s and then get underfunded in the 2020s. And by the time, I'm well out of office and maybe many of us are well out of office, we've seen some degradation of facilities. Sort of closely related to that, there's a legal services master plan that's recommended for a 2-year funding cycle. It's the rare week that I don't get a phone call and a meeting with an advocacy group around a particular sport or leisure activity. Whether it's pickleball or off-road bike activity, with tennis folks or Little League or soccer. There are a lot of great organizations and they're giving our facilities a lot of use. And what I want us to be able to do is in a structured, full overview kind of way, say, here's our trajectory with our bike trail expansion. Here's our trajectory with pickleball expansion, with soccer field expansion and the like. And really the only way to do that, I think, is to back up to 30,000 feet and have that high level lens. So those were the main things I wanted to get across. And I appreciate everybody's support for so many of the, in I think former County Manager Alan Reddish's words, the big rocks, the staff support for benefits and wages, chief among them, and certainly for the library as well. And just a quick note, I believe that the kind of materials that library staff and board members have brought to us are exactly what we've been asking for, and I think do produce rationale for that increased data. I don't know if anybody had any questions on any of those elements, but I just want to highlight a few.
Thank you. I think questions, you'll be here for the rest of the evening.
I'll be here for the evening.
Let's just wait until questions come up around. And Manager Williams also wanted to.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So hopefully we're approaching the end of a very long process. Starts 6 months ago, actually a little bit more than that. And it culminates, of course, in your approval of the budget as the charter dictates, before the start of this. And that involves hundreds of meetings, really. Meetings with all the departments, the constitutional officers. Mayor sits in on the constitutional officers. Of course, we have big rocks. We have the opportunity for constitutional officers to come and talk to you about their budget request for these budget deliberations. We have an opportunity for independent agencies to come to you and talk to you about their budget request. Big Rocks is done. The mayor does his or her work on the budget and produces that. And then in May, there's a series, usually 3 or 4, sometimes more if needed, budget deliberations just like this, where you're getting your hands around a really big and complex document that is the lifeblood of the government for the ensuing year and years after that. I say all that to say I think it's entirely appropriate for y'all. Y'all are the decision makers. These are proposals, and you can not fund them, you can change them, you can add to them. I think it's appropriate for y'all to, and I appreciate how this is done here. The mayor has a vested interest. He has a vision in his budget, but we let the mayor pro tem chair the meetings, which I think is important. And for you to call before you any number of departments or constitutional officers or independent agencies to come and explain further, and for you to ask some questions. I want to caution you, though, if we're going to begin to allow folks to change their budget proposals and come before you, because that's not fair to everybody else. And really, I know there's folks out there probably watching saying, well, how do I get involved in that? So I say all that to say I don't think anything's inappropriate, but I want us to, as far as setting precedent for future years, unless you want to expand the nature of these meetings, that we have to caution you about allowing folks to change budget proposals to come before you. Doesn't mean that you can't offer more or less, just depending on what you do, and certainly through your connections and networks and constituents and your own advocacy, you're going to have things that you want to put on the table that are different from the budget proposal. There's no issue there. But just the fairness of the process is something that we should observe going forward. That's all I want to say.
You mentioned the independent agencies. Over a year ago, or maybe longer, I have asked, how does a program become an independent agency? Well,
there is no set process for that. That was that's a title that's given to a group of organizations that have been broken down in this budget. Some are quasi-governmental. So things like Athens Advantage Behavioral Health, the library, the Council on Aging, Public Health Department. These are governmental agencies that have historically depended on some funding from the local government to help support their operations. Then we have those commissions that are children of the local government, like the Greenways Commission, Athens in Motion, Cultural Affairs. And then there's 4 community service agencies. Okay, so independent agencies is an umbrella term. And then there's community service agencies like the Neighborhood Health Center, United Way, and so on and so forth that are doing things in the community that the government wants to support on an ongoing basis. I don't know how one becomes a noted community service agency. When that came up last year, we looked into that. There's no process. But Chris, if I'm not stating, if I'm missing something, please fill in.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. So
I know with this budget, I would dare not rock the boat now. That question again, but I would ask the mayor if that we could put a committee to have a policy or procedure on how people become or how organizations become an independent agency.
Yeah, I mean, Attorney Drake has expressed that it would be ideal if there was a structure around that. And that would be the kind of thing that government operations should take on really as a sort of formal ongoing element of our functionality.
Okay, we're good? 7:15, let's take our 15-minute break and start back up at 7:30. All right?
Helen? That spreadsheet.
Call us back into session here. We're for the second part of the evening tonight, we'll be discussing the budget some more. I do want to start off by saying that we do have a tentative date if needed next Tuesday. At the end of this evening, I'm going to do a vote basically whether or not you want to have another meeting. And if we have a majority of people who do, we'll call a meeting and announce it. Does that sound like a good process? You okay with that? All right. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do was, this is for tonight, just in terms of how to go through this, is to have a round where if anyone has a specific question for the manager's office, and just 1 minute, just nothing, no discussion, just some piece of information that you need. We'll follow that with 3 minutes like we did the other day with specific asks and deletions that you're thinking about or interested in. Of course, if you'd like to, you can, you don't have to say anything. And then have a follow-up 2 minutes to respond or add on to something. And at that point, we can see where we're at, if we want to continue, or if we want to decide if we want to meet again. How does that sound? Good with that? Okay, so what we're going to do, and I unfortunately, I was halfway down here when I realized I left my magnetic kitchen timer there. So I'm using my phone. So for this is just, and we're going to go, we did so well the other day. We're going to do just 1 minute, and these are just questions. Manager's office, if you have a response, if you could make it succinctly as possible, or let us know if you'll get it to us in the next, and you can get it to us in the next maybe 48 business hours. And we'll start right now. Let's play it easy with me and start with, we're just going to start at this end. It's much easier for my head, and then we'll start the other round back this way. All right. So we're going to start, Commissioner Davenport.
Yes. So with our fire department, there was a question about making sure that they are trained well and make sure they have all the equipment and apparatus when it comes to like the medicine to treat individuals. Is that $70,000, is that dealing with that situation, or is that amount a little more? Is that amount more? Because I've been getting different price points.
Okay, so I can walk you through what the phases of scaling this operation, but to answer your specific question, we're being advised by a medical officer. I just want to say that again. We're being advised by a medical officer, okay, a doctor, who is advising our staff, our chief, on what we should and should not do. Doctor. All right, and that doctor, our first phase here between July and September is if you fund this training lieutenant, we get them on board and they begin to train additional EMTs. So there's different levels of EMT certification, okay? We have 111 out of 140 that are trained in basic EMT, okay? So unfortunately, we don't want to put things on the truck that somebody who is not trained to uses in a situation with the best of intent, okay? And that's a cautious, conservative way, but that's what our medical doctor is advising us. Now, and this is consistent with what we told several commissioners who asked earlier this year, there is some additional funds in the request that's before you now to add some medications once we get the training lieutenant on board, and once they review all our medical protocols, and once they go through this with the doctor, and this was asked for, we want to make sure there's some extra funds there to add things mid-year if we need to without having to come back to the commission. And that's my understanding.
Yeah, so breathing treatment medications, baby aspirin, Narcan, epinephrine, some of those that everyone has the EMT basic, then we will be able to use it. So, but there are funds to add those to the trucks in the second half of the year. That's our goal, is if we can get everybody trained, if if Dr. Horst is recommending that we then move forward and feels comfortable with that, then we would add those medications. But those are medications that fall within the EMT basic.
And then going beyond that, with a regimen that includes, quality control, a process that is, again, monitored by a medical doctor, then we would begin to expand the trainings beyond EMT basic over the next several years. As we reach the different thresholds of certification, that indicates the types of medications and equipment that folks are trained to use, and then those would be put onto the trucks and deployed. So
we're really just 1 year out from having advanced EMT training if we're able to get the lieutenant on next year and focus on basics. So FY24, we might be coming back with another ask for helping us to do the advanced training.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Commissioner Davenport? Okay. We're going to go on here to Commissioner Edwards. Do you have any questions?
What about me? Carol, what about me?
Oh, you're a box. Okay. Yes.
Look, he even knows where he is in line.
I know. Such a
I am a
smart
box.
box.
I did look around at the floor.
I have two questions. I'll make them quick to staff. The first one being on the remainder of the money that was put aside for the compression study findings, the $500,000. Since we're not using up that, it leaves $346,000. Are there absolute specifics already used allocating those funds for, or could we be using some of that money to deal with some of the other salary increase requests that we're getting here?
It's not earmarked for anything in particular, but in relation to some of the other requests before you, for instance, the sheriff wanting to have another market study of the deputy sheriff position, you could use it for anything. You could use it for anything you want, Commissioner.
And yeah, some of the things were some of the things I was hoping for. So, okay. So appreciate that. And then the second question I have is, well, we going back to the overtime pay and how y'all set aside the $1.5 million for an overall overtime. I guess this is throwing out the idea that what I would like to see us do is go ahead and move $500,000 of that specifically into the sheriff's department overtime fund, leaving $1 million there for the overall. Do you see any complications that I might not be foreseeing if we were to do that?
Well, you're just restricting the flexibility of the funding. And I would say that in the latest packet, and I'm sure everybody's not had a chance to see that sent out, we did have some overtime summary that was attached to that. And what I would let y'all note is that even though there's a discrepancy between what the requested overtime budgets were, and what was funded, either way, there's about $3 million that's accounted for between what's allocated in those budgets and the $1.5 million. So the funds that we anticipate that would need to be spent for overtime are in the budget. There's no shortfall here per se.
Including the sheriff's department.
And I'll say with the sheriff's department, and once you allocate funds to the constitutional officer, they can spend any way they see fit. Departments have a little bit more of a governor on them through the manager. But if you leave it in other general admin, we can fund it as needed. You really have a fiduciary responsibility to fund the operations of our constitutional officers, and they have the constitutional authority to run their operations as they see fit. So it's not as if we're going to withhold it, if he has overtime needs that are substantial.
And I agree with that, but I think there's obviously a bit of a perception issue here. And when I looked at, I do appreciate y'all sending that information over, and it just shows that, the sheriff's department requested like 1.2, but was only allocated 362,000. So it was pretty drastically underfunded. more so than, say, the fire department was or other departments were if you did the ratios. And so that's why I thought that it's obvious that they're going to use that $500,000 at some point for overtime. So it probably was just more transparent and possibly showed some more goodwill if we were to go ahead and to budget it that way out the gate. But I appreciate the answer though.
Again, and you can follow up with that during your next round. I'm going to jump to to Commissioner Link because she is trying to get to a public input meeting, and then we'll return to Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, I just have a handful of questions. I understand there's a backlog in road safety audits, and I'm wondering if this budget addresses that. I presume it would fall under traffic data collection, and I see that it's only 25,000 is allocated for it, but there is 28 left over. Yet the next year they're looking at 130,000 allocated. So I'm just wondering if that's going to meet the needs for this backlog and the idea that we probably will need to do more as we spend our T-SPLOST money.
So what page are you on, Commissioner?
And TPW, I guess it's.
What's at the bottom?
Yeah, I'm looking at the capital. Yeah, C150.
C150.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, like, those line items, if they're going to cover the needs for road safety audits and speed bumps, because I know that we have not even gotten around to installing some of the speed bumps that have been approved.
Well, I believe the funds for the neighborhood traffic management program from SPLOST have been exhausted.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Right. So, yeah, and you can see here that we only funded a portion of the request. So it's the answer is probably not. You know, it's probably not going to cover the needs that the road safety audits will uncover. Unless we can find an eligible expense within an existing T-SPLOST or perhaps a new T-SPLOST that might be applicable, but otherwise.
Well, I mean, we're going to get this new staff member who's going to be focused on road safety, and more needs are going to come to light.
We can argue for that.
Yeah,
I mean, present that.
I'd like to argue that we properly fund to make sure that. I also, I want to. We have all these needs in the fire department, including that ladder truck. I want to strongly argue for a fire safety fee or some kind of public safety fee that we can, get some revenue from UGA and some of these large scale complexes that have outsized needs.
Perhaps we can put that on a discussion with the mayor to see if that's something that could be brought up.
Yeah, and the EMT needs too. That could go there as well. I have ideas about the Cadet Program, but I'm probably going to blow out of here, so maybe I'll send some emails.
Okay.
I talked to Commissioner Edwards about it. Maybe you could translate that.
Okay. In that next, maybe I'll give you a second another minute to translate.
If I might, real quick, so on C-147 and Transportation and Public Works performance measures, the fatalities that we've experienced are alarming.
Yeah.
That is why the substance behind the Vision Zero. But if you look at the fourth or fifth one down, crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the road safety audits, the innovations that the staff and the commission continue to push forward are decreasing. The trend is clearly decreasing over the last 5 years. The number of crashes per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So it's working. Okay. But it needs more attention. So I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Lane.
Thank you. Good luck with your other meeting. Commissioner,
no, I'm going to make it.
Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, thanks. Manager Williams, I just had a quick question about the fire services. I'm looking, as Commissioner Davenport brought it up, all these false alarms that we're getting and the cost that it's saddled to taxpayers and citizens of Athens. So I see here there's a strengthened false alarm ordinance. So I'm just requesting you follow up with me at some point, maybe the commission at large, to how we can cut down on some of those false alarms, because it certainly is a big cost to deploy our fire truck and all the workers
And I remember several years ago that we did work on a draft ordinance. I think what we need to do is probably see if the mayor would be willing to put that in committee and work through the committee system, acquaint, a subset of the commissioners with it, let y'all dig into it and then see what your pleasure is.
Yeah. Be cool.
Are you good?
That's it. Yeah.
Great. We're moving on to Commissioner Parker. Do you have a question?
I believe I just have one question. So, it was requested that we be able to take a look at what the specific breakdown of authorized position requests within departments. And I see you just shared a spreadsheet with us not long ago. So really just like for our knowledge for those navigating the spreadsheet, honestly, you direct us to where we could find that information, assuming that this is here to help correct that lack of information we had previously. It's not, okay.
So could we get that?
So you're looking for the 24 recommended new positions out of all funds next to all of the department requested?
To look at those against the department requests. Because for example,
we got that list last year.
Yeah, I think we did. In the manager's follow-up to our questions from last meeting, he, pointed out that like leisure services, for example, are short-staffed. This is because they're, again, just throwing this out as an example, they requested new positions that we, that were not recommended, or they're having difficulty filling the ones that they have, et cetera. Stuff like that might be helpful for us to understand, how to potentially support initiatives and departments that also align with our goals as a commission to beef up certain areas of government. So, but thank you for kind of sending over this neat little Excel spreadsheet breakdown of what it seems effectively to be, in the budget that's also available online. Just a little.
Thank you.
Nicer. But yeah, that's my only question.
All right, Commissioner Houle?
And just in case it's helpful, I have a copy of last year's for like comparison. It was attachment number 6 in whatever that first big round of question responses we got from you in last year's budget cycle. Okay, so maybe that'd be helpful. The leaf blowers that we've talked about in LRC that we said would be around 70K to 75K for the first of 3 years transition. We talked about SPLOS being a potential source of paying for those. Do we have the money in the SPLOS Sustainability Fund for that? Do we know that yet?
I believe so.
Okay. And then we got this letter in our mailboxes.
We would need to check and see what was eligible. I can't, what I'm saying? We just have to make sure, but
They would have to go through the SPLOS
to
committee.
verify the eligibility with the committee, but the funding isn't, okay. Keep ACC Beautiful wrote us this letter about the dumping cameras that we funded last year and their need for a part-time position to fulfill that need. Am I correctly understanding that that's not yet in this budget? So for us to, in the mayor's proposed budget?
Correct.
Okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to confirm, am I understanding correctly, this is probably for finance, that the expected increase, like to try to put this concisely in my own dumb terms, the amount of extra money that we're expecting to get based on appraisals being above what was initially anticipated in this is likely to be offset by the amount that we actually collect after people appeal? Like, are those likely to balance out? Or
I'll ask the question a different way if I might. So the 1% that the tax assessor indicated, to answer Commissioner Wright's question from last time, what's the net effect of after you get emerged from the appeals process? And we said a reduction of around 1%.
Right. So
the 564,000 of new revenue equate to roughly 1% of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that additional, that 564 is already assuming, some loss on. So, I mean, that's built into the original estimate. Is we know we lose some on appeals every year. So we put in a loss estimate around, it's less than 1%.
So the loss estimate's already in there.
Yeah, it's already built in.
so maybe what's the actual amount we're looking at in addition after that loss estimate?
564,000.
564,000. Okay. Thank you.
I thought the new tax digest number 12 from last meeting, that the total real property increase is 962 million.
That's correct.
Yeah, because we got you broke down the new.
Last year to this year.
Right. And then it would be 1% of that would potentially be.
1%
of that.
Yeah, 1% of that.
Goes through the assessment.
Yeah, he's had less than that. I think it's, anywhere from, 30 to 40 million over the last few years of assessed value lost each year, somewhere between 30 and 40 million.
I don't have any questions because I'm still going through the stuff that this is very thorough to me from staff, but I do want to comment from a personal experience of my son's fraternity. They got charged. There's evidently so many false, like a smoke detector goes off. I forget the number, but it was the police after the fifth one. He talked about how much money they had to pay with it because they had new smoke detectors and they were so sensitive. And they told people to smoke outside and they didn't. Somebody, and so, but anyway, they do get assessed.
Thank you. Commissioner Thornton.
Can I just clarify from what we heard back, because there are a lot of numbers going around.
Yeah.
So that 564,000 that you threw out, essentially, if we had that when this initial document was calculated, we'd add that on top of the 642,000 unallocated.
Yeah.
546 is the figure.
Yeah.
So we really have like just over $1 million unallocated. Thank you. 1.2.
Okay. Commissioner Thornton?
I'll be really quick. Neighborhood leaders, we did get we got three budgets that we did we asked for. Tim did send that to us. But I don't understand why we didn't get a budget that included the DFACS monies. Could you?
Yes. So there are two different funding sources, and when you commingle those, it gets complicated. But I appreciate the question, and I talked with staff this afternoon. So maybe here's a different way of looking at it. So that is a state grant. It's not guaranteed. The way I think we could look at this is much like a state supplement for some of our other employees, like assistant district attorneys. So if you think about it that way, the original $750,000, the base salary was $30,000 per neighborhood leader, which is $14.42 an hour. Then the DFACS grant came along, and the way that the communities and schools, as our contractor, decided to allocate some of those funds, and let's call it a supplement, added $3,000 to the base salary. So there's a state grant supplement, which could go away next year, okay? So now the neighborhood leaders with the base pay of our 30 plus another 3 are making $33,000, all right? And that equates to $15.87 an hour, okay? Now, their most recent proposal, which we shared with you today in response to the Prosperity Committee's request, another 7%, all right? So that, if you were to do that on top of the base pay, on top of the state grant supplement, that would bring them to $35,100 a year or $16.86 an hour. I hope that was useful.
Yeah, I'm jotting off. It is absorbed later for me. My next question, and since I have been on this commission, we have never talked about interest that some of our fundings get, and the main one I'm talking about is the American Rescue money. Right now, I know we spent some of that money, but I imagine there is probably about 37 mil that is probably in the bank, somebody's bank. What is the interest, or can we get some information about the interest this money is accruing?
Sure. And I'd share this with you. So all of the projected interest on all of our accounts plus ARPA are accounted for in this proposed budget. Now those are making assumptions about what the interest rates are. And of course that's changing daily. So I want to give you some assurances too about how much work that you never see that goes on with our finance department in the form of cash management practices. So there are different types of investments, if you will. A lot of them are overnight. You know, we give our cash balances and the bank holds them, and then we make an increment off of that, and that's parceled out to interest rates or for interest. And that income is accounted for in the budget. So certainly nothing is being unused. Everything's being maximized as far as what we can do. There are some longer term securities that are invested in, so the answer is yes, the ARPA is being invested to generate interest. It's not being, it's accounted for as a general fund revenue, Chris, it's not a separate, sorry, David. And David, you did respond to that. Would you add anything to what I'm saying? That was a rudimentary cash management primer there.
Yeah, most federal grants, the interest that is accrued on those grants stays with that grant. In other words, it gets used for the same purposes. ARPA specifically excluded that. So in other words, any interest, which has not been much, I think last time I looked, there was we just got some more money supposed to come in now, but it was at the end of April about $16 to $18 million we had left of the initial tranche. Most of that money during that time was earning 5 basis points, which is less than 0.1% of interest. So it wasn't accruing very much interest to begin with. And what interest it was accruing was being transferred to the general fund account.
So when it transfers to the general fund, is there a way that we know that $10 went to the general fund from interest? I mean, does it show up? If I looked at a report, would I see that, or it just does it by itself?
I mean, we could give you the total amount that had been transferred because it happens on a monthly basis. But there's not a report that shows.
No, and that's another thing, Mayor, that we will look at in the future. How money is moving around. I know you know what you're doing. And I just would like to know. And so when I look at a budget, that interest may be in the general fund, but I won't know. I can't look at it and say, oh, this is how this much went to the general fund from interest. So I know we can't resolve that tonight, but Mayor, there's some way. I don't know what committee that goes to, but that's something we can look at later.
I'm telling you that the general fund this year, out of all the millions of dollars we have, but that we've invested either through Georgia Fund 1 or through another investment financial institution, it's brought in like $30-something thousand.
Okay.
I mean, it is. A few years ago, we had $5 million.
Okay.
Now it's 30,000. So now all of our interest rates are pegged basically to the Fed funds rate. And so got to talk about Georgia Fund 1 or the interest rate that banks give us. It's really based on the overnight repo market, which is directly related to the Fed funds rate. When the Fed funds rate is 0, you're getting virtually nothing on your money. But we're kind of limited as to where we can put our money because state law and things like that. So it's safe, but it's not hurting anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I move on to Commissioner Hamby?
Thank you. I'm going to try to say it. I'm just looking at the numbers and listening to what y'all are saying and trying to figure out what it is that we want to fund or not fund and what we want to do. So we know we have outstanding.
Are you starting the other round?
I'm starting my 3 minutes.
Okay, you don't have a question then.
No, but I'm going to use my 3 minutes to.
Oh, no. Everyone, that's fine. I just want to make sure I have to give you the 3 minutes. I had 1 minute for a question because you didn't get a question.
I may have a question in here somewhere when I'm done.
Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. We're starting the 3 minute round, okay? You're a difficult guy. Right.
So there's $1.2 million that we know is unallocated.
Right.
So And we have a lot of requests for a higher millage rate decrease. And just think in terms of set that aside, and that gets us not quite another quarter, probably 0.2, extra 0.2 millage rate decrease. So I'd bump that up to about 1.7 mils. And then you got to take and factor in, okay, we know we need $16,000 for the juvenile court, $39,000 for the state court attorney, $315,000 for the library, $20,000 for the Athens area homeless shelter, $17,000 for the attorney. I think Allison brought this up, $50,000 for corridor improvements. That's been a thing on our corridor committee about that. That was the same amount that's funded last year, and I think they've already done it. And then I looked at Tim's proposal for the neighborhood leaders and kind of met it in the middle. I think for the Cadillac version it's a Cadillac version, so maybe we just need the Hyundai version, which would add about $165,000 more. It's a lot for Hyundai. So that brings total needs to $622,000 if that's what everybody had an interest in doing. And there may be other interests that I haven't heard or whatnot. But then you take it, where's that money coming from, you ask? So you get the $1.2 million is out of the way. That's going towards millage rate decrease. So you got to look for stuff that you want to cut back on. So the leisure services master plan, I understand what the mayor is saying about having that high level thing, but I think since it's broken up into 2 years, maybe start it the next fiscal year and go from there. But also taking Beach Haven down to $80,000, it gets it at least started when the program comes on board for SPLOST. And then I also started looking at the leisure services park improvements plan and recognizing that there's $450,000 going into that this year from SPLOST dollars. So they've got it in the general fund. I think it's $2.2 million, $2.174 million. So you back out the $450 that they get for that they're getting for SPLOST, so that still gives them the $2.174 million that they want to spend for the park improvements for this year. And this is still a significant amount of money for leisure services park improvements, because last year they got, $200,000. Next year they're allocated to plan to get $700,000. So maybe next year we can look at the budget.
Would you like your other minute?
I do.
Okay, go for it.
So that gives us, what does that give us? 450. That gives us about $730,000. That if we were to cut those three things, the 450, the 280, 730,000 minus the 622, that covers all the things that I've heard us talking about. So you still got some dollars left there to if I missed something. I will say this in my last 30 seconds. 40 seconds. The Transportation and Public Works Capital Funds Project. I mean, if y'all look at it, I'm glad this was brought to our attention on that page C-150. Neighborhood pedestrian and traffic calming, one of the things I get asked about the most in neighborhoods. Not necessarily speed humps. I mean, we do speed humps. We have all sorts of strategies to beat that. But $25,000 is not adequate enough. But so if you look at, I'm saying just shift some of the dollars around. Look at what we're paying for upgrade overhead street name signs. Nice to have, but it's probably more important to have the traffic calming in the neighborhoods. I mean, we still, what's wrong with the signs now, but also the bridge improvement and replacement program. I know that's important, but we also have T-SPLOST dollars associated with that. So you see where I'm going there?
Yes.
I mean,
you're moving around some things. Good ideas. Okay, good.
Did y'all follow my flow chart there?
You just type it up and send it writing and send it.
I sat on the typewriter.
I mean, at some point we got to get to the flow chart.
Yeah. Could you wait till
spreadsheet?
Yourself some notes and wait till the end rather than we don't get a response. So I'll give you time. I'll give you a little while at the end. I think that would be better to keep us moving.
Oh, excuse me.
Commissioner Thornton, 3 minutes now.
My other I asked about the interest.
No, what you want.
Oh, what do I want?
Yeah, what you want, what you're going to get rid of. We're into that.
I'm not supporting, I think I'm in agreement about the beach haven for now. That project does not come off for another, 2 years? And I think we can look at staff at that point in time. I had some, concern about Vision Zero. I mentioned it at last week's meeting. I feel a lot differently about that. I do support the traffic calming and things that that Commissioner Link brought up. So I would like to see more money put in that area. Now with the neighborhood leaders, I think I'm trying to grasp my head around the defects money the way the manager explained it to us. But I think that middle proposal is what I would support. I don't think I would do the Cadillac version that Mike described it. So, and I do think, and I'll put it on record now, for next year, because I do think the neighborhood leaders have done a great job. And I think that if we would have had a conversation earlier, we could have gotten something, we wouldn't probably be at this impasse now. But I do want to say that we probably need to really look at the structure of the neighborhood leaders. One thing I will also put out that we have not discussed is about the animal shelter. I think they requested 2 new workers, and we gave them 1. Manager Blaine Williams, I know that you've talked to Samantha, who's a constituent in my district, about the workload, especially on weekends. Do you remember, or have you any final thoughts about, or different thoughts on why we were only allocated 1 worker, given the problems that she cited, mainly on the weekends and evenings?
Well, and I could, well.
I'm gonna, can we make a little list of things that you can respond to again? Because we do have, it's already 5 after 8.
Oh, you can do it now. That's fine.
Okay. So I want to stop that.
And I 100% support the library and the cadet proposals.
Okay, we're going to move on to Commissioner Wright.
Right. Okay. I like the way that this has been going. I think finding some funds for that additional millage rate decrease. I have some numbers I wanted to share with everybody about single family residents and the number of them, because I think it helps see, I think that was brought up about, anyway, we have 33,000 roughly single family resident dwellings in our community. 25,000 of them, the house is appraised for about $315,000 and less. Okay, so the majority of them, and I picked 315,000 because I use the same math chart to compare how many houses we have with the one CD project. But I think it's important for us to know that this millage rate decrease is a significant help for the majority of the people who own a home. And of these $315,000 and less assessed properties, 10,000 of them have homestead exemptions. So this is affecting homeowners, 10,000 of the 25, and then the rest are going to be renters who are also going to be affected. Rents go up because of the millage rate. So I think that if we continue to prioritize lowering the millage rate while we can, since the assessments went up, it's good. And I'm glad that Mike has already been starting with the math to show that we can do both as well as still fund things. I think the library funding from the original request, I was ready to support that. So I've got to readjust with this new math, but I'm in support with that. I think the cadet program is a unique youth development project. I would like to know more about other funding options of it, if it could come from some of the other youth development buckets. If we can't find them. Did you have that in your list? The cadet?
I did not cut that. No,
Okay.
I just cut it.
So we might need to continue to look for that. The part-time, I'd like to see us get that part-time person that's going to help the effectiveness of the cameras that we have, which is the anti-littering. I wasn't clear when I first read through it, Kelly. I thought that the Central Service litter, you have two positions. I thought one of the
so those are for actual like
on the ground
notification activities.
Okay. Anyway, so I don't have any big beefs with this. I like the way we're getting to share our ideas, and maybe we can swing to one person's priority and they help with another priority to address this. I think the courts, we need to address those. I'm also in favor of that as well. And finance, you guys have a lot of overtime. You sure you don't need another position while we're talking about it? I'm looking at the overtime chart here.
That was quiet, but.
Finance department. But anyway, okay, maybe next year.
Okay, I'm going to move on. We'll all do some good listening here to Commissioner Poole.
Right. Yeah, so first, I mean, I've spent so much time asking questions in a lot of these past meetings. I haven't really had a chance to say, like, I really generally like and appreciate the budget that the mayor brought forth. I think it has a lot of really good stuff in it, and a lot of that includes a lot of really good work that staff has done to get us to this point in response to what we've talked about over the past year and what many of us, I think, advocated to push into last year's budget. So I really appreciate this starting point. I think it's a great starting point. There's a few small things, most of them I think Mike actually mentioned, I think we agree on. The attorney requested 50,000, the state court of 38,500, fixing that clerical error for the Athens area homeless shelter of 20,000. This Keep ACC Beautiful dumping part-time position, I think makes sense to me at 23,400, and then 4,000 to bring up the ACAC's request to the full amount they requested and presented on. And then sticking with that 315,000 for the library, that'd be 415,900 total. And then I need more time to kind of make sense of the neighborhood leaders thing to know, but I would like us to at least make sure we're giving them the opportunity to make something sustainable. From there, I guess I just want to share that, for cuts. So I'm fine with doing the half a year for Beach Haven. I think that, you know, I'm amenable to that. I do think it's important that we get that going because the reality is, you know, people are using the space already on the trails that have already existed there for years. And in order for us to make sure that they're used in a way that's appropriate and safe and doesn't damage property, I think that gets us there. The Youth Cadet Program, I think they made a really compelling case here. I'm actually wondering with how much time it usually takes for new programs to get off the ground and actually get everybody brought in, though, if there's room to maybe do like a 3/4 funding of that, that would give them the revenue to get their initial people that would run it hired early, but then, you know, whatever time it takes to get other people brought on. And I would like to cut the assault rifles. I'm not compelled to see the need for every officer to have an assault rifle in the trunk of their car. So there's a lot of flexibility in there for us to adjust other requests, including maybe a bit more of a millage rate reduction, as well as a lot of the position requests that I'm looking forward to seeing, because there's maybe a couple that I don't know about yet that I really feel compelled to support. Not everybody had the opportunity the juvenile court judge did to make a 10-minute plea to us for them to get a raise. And most of them are not making as much as she already makes. And that's not to say that what she makes is fair compared to other judges in the state, but it is to say that, like, when we think about living wage is this thing we've really been trying to tackle, that I think there's some work there to take seriously. And then I just, you know, if we do a millage rate reduction further, you know, we've heard the same people who have kind of protested the assessments also talk about how, you know, the $0.50 we've already gotten here isn't enough. And so if those folks aren't satisfied by $0.50, I'm not sure an extra 1/10 or 2/10 of a mil on top of that makes a meaningful difference. But
we can make it meaningful if you want.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Pro Tem Myers. I did mention earlier the breakdown of departmental requests versus what was recommended, and so we could see what positions that were requested that were not in the budget we have seen. I mean, one that is particularly of interest to me is actually kind of reframe what I was thinking, because the planning department is one that I'm particularly interested in. And so as with the Vision Zero coordinator position, if I could get a breakdown of what this administrator level division head will do to, you know, advance the list of special projects that we kind of have coming down the pipeline. In the manager's response here, I'm looking at page 2 in his response from 12/18 today. It's number 8. Issues related to gentrification and assurance of, well, particularly issues related to gentrification. Actually, you know what? Let's skip over that. I only have 3 minutes. So yes, I'd love to learn more about that position. I was really heartened to hear that with regards to the police cadet program, we just generally have a broad and shared interest in youth development. I think this document, I guess this research that we were handed, gives us really good data for the efficacy of youth development programs more broadly. And so when I take a look back at the survey that Leisure Services distributed back in around the time we were looking at the summer programs, respondents talked about sports, aquatics, cooking, gaming, social media, art and graphic design, performing arts, nature, outdoors, virtual reality, foreign languages, science, STEM, creative writing, college preparation, and nothing about, I mean, the military, but that was so few it didn't even make the list. And so I think that if we are, as I think Chief Salter said, you know, listening to youth, thinking about how we can implement programming to keep people out of trouble that is actually responsive to what our kids are telling us. Particularly, I'm very worried about folks that are already like the most at risk, who are already becoming involved in crime and may not see a program like this as a safe place for them, or a place where they see themselves reflected. And so thinking about programs like I've brought up many times, like Cure Violence, where folks that have been previously involved in gangs or previously incarcerated themselves have that street cred, reach out to those folks who are like, you know, on the cusp of, you know, actually going out and doing harm, I think would be a much more effective use of our funds, either here or through, you know, American Rescue Plan, when we continue to talk about youth development. But with that said, I think I already articulated support for the library. I guess I would add that I would be interested in supporting our juvenile courts better. Let's see if I had any other notes that I did not talk about. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to that, mostly that breakdown of departmental positions that were recommended, and that planning department. Oh, did you even set the timer? I bet you did.
But this is that other little thing I have so much better when this sound comes along.
You can change the sound.
I know, but you know, that's a whole other thing. Okay, 3 minutes. Russell.
Thanks.
That's
looking
good.
at the central services budget, again, Commissioner Hull alluded to this, but the LRC voted unanimously to recommend an increased appropriation for the small tool electrification, place of current gas-powered tools. So that comes from SPLOST or whatever. I just want to get it figured out this budget cycle. So that's certainly something reflective of some of our committee work. It touches on a lot of goals and objectives of this government to create a more sustainable government, employee work safety. So I look forward to that. And I support the library appropriation, support the cadet program. And I guess I just look forward at this point to see a whatever sort of CDO written modification of the budget with these extra projects that have come to life to be circulated, so we can go ahead and get a vote going expeditiously. Thank you.
The box.
The box. The box.
Yeah.
Commissioner, yes. Commissioner Jensen.
Tim the Box Benson, yeah. Okay, so what I have for additions here, a lot has been mentioned already. The attorney's office, state court attorney, juvenile court judge salary increase. I'm fine with that, but Commissioner Hull makes some good points. I also want to do that lateral move of the sheriff's office overtime, moving $500,000 into the sheriff's office overtime from the 1.5 general overtime bucket. I also had, this was in the answers that we got today also, $7,000 for the sheriff's office salary adjustment study. That is what they told us it would cost us. That's $7,000 there for that. I'm on board for the electric leaf blower transition, also the illegal dumping surveillance manager at 23.4. One thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is for housing and community development. One of the positions that was not funded was a project support position at $56,000. And with the number of projects that we have going towards them, plus this new restructuring of the department, I think that all the supports that they need, that they can get, are going to be very helpful in actually following through with all these new initiatives. Have the library wages at $315, the homeless shelter, and I do think it is very worthwhile for us to go ahead and fund the neighborhood leaders at the high ask, because without doing the high ask, we're talking about they're not going to get any salary increases at all, and they'll actually have a reduction in their benefits, seeing their health coverage get cut actually to make. So I think it'd be worthwhile to go ahead and fund that fully at the $280,000. And so all of that comes to just over 2.2 million. And for cuts, that doesn't come to 2.2. Then if we add in a 0.15 mil reduction, which is $870,000, that brings us down to 2.2. And then for where we can get the cost savings to pay for this, we have the property assessment adjustment at 564, the mayor's unallocated funding at 642, the compression remainder that I mentioned earlier at 346, and let's see, and then the overtime set aside reduction. That's just a parallel one, so that doesn't really make an effect. And then the beach haven operations, moving that to half a year. And then I still do have cutting the police youth cadet corps. To me, it also, you all have paperwork in front of you that I did not get to see. I did watch the entire presentation. I felt like there was definitely some elements of it that did not seem completely fleshed out. And I felt like it could very much just go for some of the ARPA funding for youth development that has not been allocated yet. So anyways, we could do all of that and actually still have a balance of $77,000 left over to be moved around, a little bit of cushion there. So yeah, that's what I've got.
Great. The beeper went off, but you did great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I like the mayor's budget as is. It's pretty good. I need to mull over the library's multiple budget requests. So, and I do like the youth cadet program. Beach haven at half a year. There was an environmental study that was done, partially funded last year, that needs to be completed, that Commissioner Thorne and I worked on. I do not have a actual amount, but just speaking to staff, we're underfunded to complete that project. I am all for working with Avita Thorne and restructuring the neighborhood leaders program. 16 leaders, when only literally 8 of them are actually active, getting paid $32,000 a year. It's like a waste of money for me. So I do have a list of a bunch of cuts, but I look forward to working with my colleagues to finalizing this budget.
Thank you. And I've asked Commissioner Davenport to do a little timing for me. I don't think I'll take that long, because what I have to say has to go more, sort of repeats a lot of what other people have already said in here, although I have the strategic goals all listed next to them, but I won't go over those. I have money in here for the library request, and I need to look at that a little bit more closely. I do want to respect the authority of the the library director and give her leeway. It's not clear to me if we did fund it more. I'd like her to be making the decision finally on that breakdown. The state court, I want to just clarify again, the medical expenses for the fire department. I just need to see that because I've been having a hard time understanding that. And we got that information a little less late. The homeless shelter correction, the $15,000 for the attorney's office. Someone had mentioned to me something about the Community Arts Council for $4,000, the $23,000 person for the Keep Athens Clean and Beautiful, the illegal dumping to help with that. And also that transition to electric power leaf blowers, and to clarify with us if we were going to put that in there and allocate T-SPLOST funds, how we would go about doing that. I have Juvenile Courts salary increase in here, but people could talk to me about that. I have that adding up to $626,000, but that I have a little cushion in there. And I have subtractions from the police cadet program. I like what I was hearing, but I need to review it again. I don't know how many people that is. That's 2 positions. There aren't large numbers for the 2 positions that we're getting out of that. So I'm not certain about that. And in some ways, I'd like that to be for the community, sort of a more thorough part of our youth development program, and analyzed through that lens as well. Man, no one mentioned this one. I had cutting money from the nonprofit capacity building and using some of the ARPA monies for that, half of that, and as well as cutting back Beach Haven for half as well to halftime later in the year. So that's what I have right now that I was working with. And I just really appreciated hearing everyone else's ideas here. It seems like we're at a good place to be. I'm using my 40 seconds here, that there's a lot here that we could work with together and collaboratively. And I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how we can do that. I'm all for getting an increased millage rate reduction. I want to do that and respect the needs of our staff, of the government, whether or not it's exactly that whole sum that Commissioner Hamby said, or that minus 100, so that we can make sure we get something else done that's really important. That's not as important to me as really thinking through the whole process there. Okay, we are at 8:30. For those people who are here now, would anyone like a 2-minute response? I'm going to pass on mine.
You need to respond.
Oh.
Manager's got.
The manager, let me give the manager that time I promised.
Just a few quick points. With regard to the road sign, so what that is there are new standards for retro reflectivity. So they reflect more so we have to change those out over time. There was T-SPLOST ask in 2018, not funded at all. There's a T-SPLOST ask in 23, not funded at all. And there's lots of signs out there, y'all. So that's why there was
partially funded. The T-SPLOST.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We did partially fund
Something there.
Makes sense.
The T-SPLOST list has, it's not the full amount requested, but it's
Well, okay, I stand corrected, but with its life cycle, it's not funded at all where it needs to be. So when we don't use those funding sources to fund the life cycle requirements, and T-SPLOST 2020 is gone, T-SPLOST 2023 is gone, ARPA's gone, it falls to general fund, or it doesn't get replaced.
Blaine, just to clarify real quick, I wasn't advocating taking it out of the budget. I was advocating trying to get more money within central services capital or transportation capital projects over to neighborhood traffic calming. So I've heard that can be done. That's what I was.
Yes, sir. And not being argumentative at all. Just wanted to make the case for some of the capital requests. Youth development, there was a question earlier about, well, how come we didn't fund this out of the ARPA 500,000? And y'all were explicit that it was for nonprofits, because we did have some internal agencies say, hey, can we put in a proposal? And we said, no, it says nonprofit. So same with the school district. They call it, nope, it's nonprofits. I hear y'all.
That was for the summer. The
summer one.
Right. Okay.
So I heard some of y'all employing a tool. I want to caution you about it too. The half-year funding. because that does work to balance this year's budget, but it is a full year next year, and you're committing and obligating the next group to doing that. I say group, the next commission, and that comes right off the top of any new revenues that you have. And so if you do use that, use it sparingly because it does add up. Just like y'all have gone through, I think, a very well crafted list of things that you want to see, and you can see it gets up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars pretty quick. And so that would be the first thing you'd have to fund next year. And with compression, and Laura, please, there may be some extra looks at that. So we might want to leave a little bit of extra money in the compression account so that we can take care of some issues that we might find as we continue to look at that. Laura, anything to add to that?
Yeah, like I was saying when I presented last week, when you look at we're right now with the $15 an hour wage study, we're taking $150,000 to stop, to sort of have a reset for the immediate compression issue. Basically, when you look at the entire classification system, that can, and like I said, our first 6 or 7 pay grades, the minimum of those pay grades is now below what our wage floor is. And so if we adjust our entire classification system and you look at 415 positions that might require some kind of adjustment, you can get into 6 figures pretty quick. So that's why that 500,000. Again, I don't know if we would need all of it, but we might need some of it upon further study.
Would most of that be covered by the 7% that everyone's getting now?
No, because everybody is moving up 7%.
So everybody's moving at 7%, but that's 7% of the existing proportion. So they're not, there's maybe some compression, but it's not quite the.
Right, it's not at the lower level, right, where it becomes 15, 16. Those are just.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's do this just saying 2 minutes of a wrap up, like feeling, I mean, if you have something, there was a lot of agreement among us, but where you feel you're at this point among us. I feel, I'm going to start and go fast. I feel very positive about this. I feel that there's a lot, with thoughtful compromise and understanding that, in my dream of all dreams, we could come up with one commission defined option that we could work forward in a amicable way and do good for the community as well. So I have worked on a spreadsheet. If others want to work, maybe we could have some informal conversations among individuals to find out who would be interested in producing this document moving forward.
Yeah, so at home in my office, I have a spreadsheet as well. And I look forward to working with my colleagues together and finalizing this budget. I don't think we need next Tuesday meeting, but I look forward to hearing from my colleagues. But definitely just mulling over the library, supporting our sheriff, just finding out more from your ask a lot. So I look forward to wrapping this up.
Okay, and maybe you can follow Commissioner Davenport's lead and put in.
Could I add something real quick? I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. So finance has crafted a spreadsheet that they can populate and send out to y'all. So it's the same tool instead of everybody having different spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. And then, we'll try and summarize most of what we heard tonight, and we can send that through y'all. And then that could be used to maybe finalize details.
Re-enter all that information.
And mention whether or not you think there's a.
Don't forget the box.
Oh,
man in the box.
You're so good with that box. Okay, Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're all not too far away. We're kind of saying some similar things, just slightly different, and I think we can work on something. I've got my spreadsheet going, and I'm happy to work with folks to come up with a CDO. I don't think that next Tuesday's meeting would need to be long, but I do think that we need it to be able to finalize some elements, obviously, here, because while we are close, we're not there. And so I would definitely recommend us having a short hour and a half meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you, Commissioner Jensen, and moving on to Commissioner Parker.
A general note with regards to Tuesday's meeting, I think that I've so far heard like, what, 5-6 spreadsheets going on? It might actually be better if we're to have a meeting on next Thursday.
I agree.
So that we have time to look at what each other's got going on. I mean, you know, between now and Tuesday, it's not much time for us to speak amongst ourselves about a synthesis of priorities. So if folks want to have a meeting, I would recommend that meeting be next Thursday and not next Tuesday. And I will reiterate something I've brought up numerous times now about the millage rate. In our follow-up email from the manager, if we were to roll it back a quarter of a mil, that's $1.4 million. I would much prefer to see us set aside that amount in our affordable housing funds and ARP and actually dedicate it specifically to low-income homeowners as opposed to giving equal amounts back to folks who need it and don't. So just I wanted to throw that out there for folks' consideration. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I like a lot of what we've heard. I personally don't feel like we need another meeting. I think that we've gotten through this more methodically and I think in a bit more detail than we did the last and only other cycle I've been a part of. So I think with the tool that finance gives to us, I'm hoping that we'll, at least begin by working with the mayor pro tem, as kind of our dear leader right now. And then from there, if we find ourselves kind of diverging in our opinion, maybe there's, 2 different proposals to look at in the end or something. But I hope that we can arrive at a singular proposal. And I would trust Mayor Pro Tem, who's guided us to this point, to do that effectively after this. It seems to me like the only real difference is around this millage rate question, because we agree on most of the other specifics that we've cited. And I think whatever else we discover as we read through everything we've gotten, we can kind of communicate to each other via whatever we're doing with the spreadsheet that we get. So to speak to the millage rate reduction, I'll just say, I share a lot of Commissioner Parker's sentiments. I'll reiterate what I had mentioned in previous weeks about the upcoming votes on the homestead exemptions as an opportunity to really help low-income folks meaningfully. Also mentioned that the school district is cutting their millage rate for the first time in a very long time, which will have a very significant impact. 2/3 of people's property taxes go to that. And I do think that the mayor has who's been in office way longer than me, has really mapped out and explained well a gradual, methodical approach to the millage rate reduction, which is part of what got us this $500,000 this year. And I'd look forward to us kind of thoughtfully approaching that again next year if we find ourselves in a similarly fiscally healthy situation. But we're also safeguarded against some of the economists' fears that I think have been fairly well articulated by our finance director too, about where things might slow down.
I hope that I think Tuesday's going to be a very distracting day for us to be having.
Oh, I forgot. No, that's
and then moving add in a Thursday session. I'm just not sure about that. I think if we start with the finance department's Excel sheet, so that we're all working with the math, the numbers stated versus the different stacks as Rosie has. But anyway, and that'll help us when we go through our thought process from starting with that document. And I guess that's just it about the meeting. And then we have one more taxpayer bill of rights on the night of this. So I think it's really important for us to remember that we're making decisions or sharing some decisions we want to make, but we still have the third opportunity for the public to tell us where they want the priorities to be. And let's not forget of the impact and the information we heard at the first one here, the last one in City Hall, and then we've got another one in City Hall. And I think that we should be careful about we just need to not forget that the other factor in helping us with priorities, and that's public input.
So would you suggest that if we still don't agree after that we just bump it to a following week's work session?
No. We vote on the 7th.
Right.
No.
But you said
can we all agree on that now as well? Yeah.
Vote on the 7th, and I'm just saying that
Yeah,
We still are listening to each other and still listening to the public
But no on Tuesday.
But we're voting on that Tuesday.
and voting on that 7th, yes.
No one. Okay, Commissioner Thornton.
I feel that, and I don't even believe I'm saying this, but I do think we need to meet next Thursday briefly. I hear my clerk over here gasping for air. But
It's better than Tuesday.
Because we've had other meetings, one very recently that took some back and forth stuff. And I think you do better face to face. Tweaking it, you know, and witness it. I just think we need to have that last meeting. I know that we still have not decided about the neighborhood leaders. So that's another reason I think that folk really need to digest. I would love to hear what everybody else thinks. We just got that report this morning. So everybody really needs to look at that and it's not what I say, it's what we collectively would want for the neighborhood leaders. So that's another reason. I don't think that we should steer to the way of property taxes being just for poor. I've talked to Sheila Neely and another group that when they made that request, when she made that request with others, she was not just talking about a low income break. She was talking about a break across the board. And she called me that next morning. And that is the consensus of some of the folk that she is with. So but we do need to address this. And I think Mike did a good job and a couple other people did a good job, you know, putting some numbers together. But I do think a Thursday meeting, I think we should try to do that I just think we should try to do it.
Thank you. Mike, did you put a vote in on do you want your 2 minutes? I'm losing track.
Yeah, you cut me short the last time.
Yeah, that 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And that, right. Okay, good. Go for it.
I do think, certainly the next Thursday meeting is probably appropriate. I don't really feel comfortable. I'll do the spreadsheet, but I'm not going to make any decisions over email about a $300 million budget from that standpoint. But so I think having a meeting next Tuesday and certainly taking next Thursday and certainly taking into very much account of the public hearing on the 7th, I think will help us define a bit better about the direction we want to go in for a millage rate decrease. I do, certainly we're adding a lot to the budget this year that's going to increase the expense of governments from here on out, 24 employees. And if there ever was a time that's right to take a look at the millage rate, larger decrease this year, I appreciate the mayor's efforts with a 0.5. We haven't had a significant millage rate increase on the county side for a number of years. Significant decrease. Let me make sure I said that. For a number of years. We haven't really had a significant increase either. But I can't think of really at any really significant increase. So anyway, all that to say is I hope y'all don't totally dismiss the importance of what that would mean to a lot of people if they are to save a few extra dollars per month and whatever. Costs are going up for us, but they're going up for people we represent as well.
And businesses.
Thank you. And I'll I didn't put a vote in there right now. Actually, I think we're kind of like even. No, we'll make it 5. I'm going to put the one for the Thursday as well, a short meeting coming in, because I think, as Commissioner Hamby has said, it might be better for us to discuss this more in person. There are a lot of things that we do need to decide on. And I'm just taking the point about the millage rate and such. Want to add that I don't think at this point we have a tool that could take that money and get it to the people in the most in need. So I don't want to create, we don't actually have a tool for that. So therefore, if we have extra money I wanted to go for a millage rate reduction. I want to put it towards some unknown fund and process that we haven't developed yet. But anyway, that's my response. Commissioner Gordon?
It seems I'm the only person who don't have a spreadsheet, so I'm wondering,
No, they're going to give us a better one.
okay. And that was my question.
Yeah, we're not making it. We just modify.
Okay, that's what I was, okay, I'm good.
Okay. And would anyone else like to make a comment since I just added one myself?
The question is just where and when on Thursday?
I would say.
Do you want to play it by ear, so we feel early next week?
There's another week after, before the 7th.
I think we need to go ahead and schedule it for the public and everyone else to know at this point. And the thing is, we want to do it by next Thursday. The following week, we should get any CDOs to Clerk Spratland at 12 o'clock on Wednesday so that she has plenty of time to get it up and for the public to view. So I think we do need, if we're going to meet, to be next Thursday. Any other final comments for the good of the body and the community?
And can adjourn.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. We adjourn.
Sorry, I'm all for that, but just like what time and place?
Let's do Thursday, 5:30, same place, same time. Keep it simple, right here.
Since we won't have input, we don't have to do this firing squad arrangement. Maybe we could go back. I'm wondering why we're not doing City Hall, so we can hear each other.
That would be fine with me. Is that what the will of the body here?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Easier for the eye of the broadcast.
Okay, well, let's do it from City Hall. It'd be easier. We have this.
To hear each other.
I'll have to call in because I already planned that I paid for leave after our previously scheduled day. So I'll be calling in from out of state.
I just want to go on record that I am glad to be there at what'd you say, 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30.
But I do need to go public. My constituents says that's too early. So I've said it, okay? They can't get here, but I've done my part. I'll see you at 5:30. Adjourn.
Let's look at that in mind for next year.
Okay, thank y'all. Oh, we don't have to adjourn. This is real.
We have that meeting is adjourned. There's minutes. There are minutes. Let's just do that legally.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Goodbye.
Okay, majority has.
The part about 5:30 is